Okay, let's call to order this Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022, Rector Newton Falls Council meeting to order. If you have any devices, if you could either turn them off or set them to vibrate and stand for the pledge in a time of prayer.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Precious Lord, dear God, we thank you for the opportunity to join here together, dear Lord, to represent our community, to make decisions based on our community. We pray for wisdom, guidance, and direction. We do pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, anytime Mrs. King is ready to call for the roll.
Steppert.
Here.
Sorotko.
Here.
Bariak.
Here.
Splitzer.
Present.
Granchi.
Here. Okay. Special presentation. We got the commission's reports this evening, and we have them, so I don't believe we have to go through them word by word, unless anybody wants to. Oh, okay, we got individuals that have them.
Lorna has a little Parks and Rec. You just want to, we already did our summary, so they wanted me to kind of go over a couple things.
Okay.
There was Tim Stinson, John Rusco, me, and Jamie Klein were on Parks and Rec. Jamie Klein had the one meeting. 5 meetings were held. And you guys have pretty much everything. The main thing that we would kind of like to see is a budget. Last year, from my understanding, there was zero pretty much operating budget for Parks and Rec. We asked for a budget a couple times. We never had a budget. In our last meeting, the information was we'll present something and it'll be approved or not. But a lot of Parks and Rec stuff needs to have an amount. We need to know how much we have because a lot of them are matching grants. So if we don't have a set amount, we don't know what type of grants to go for. So that was pretty much our main thing. A lot of things that we had gone over and were passed as motions were not brought to council. Mainly because there was no funding. And let's see. And pretty much another thing was $5,375 was donated by the baseball league for 150 tons of dirt between the six fields, and $2,549 was donated for fence caps. Actually, the baseball league donated more than our city did for what was actually put into the park. So we would just want to give a shout out to them. They thank them for what they did. They're actually donating a couple things this year as well. And last thing is the financial report showed that overall the committee was unhappy with what was being presented with the report. The allotment was we weren't in control of any of amounts that we were given, and that money was spent out of Parks and Rec without it being approved or even on Parks and Rec's table. So in the future, we would ask that if money does come out of Parks and Rec, even if it was allocated or if it was approved by council, to at least let Parks and Rec know what is happening with their funds. So thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, if not, we'll move on to
Kenny,
yes.
put the mic by
Move on to public comments. And this is for agenda items, so give your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes unless previously requested, and we have 2 of those. The first one is Mr. John Richards.
John, is this right? Can you hear me?
Well, I'm having perfect with you, it's just the mic's up here.
Okay. I want to thank the mayor and council and administration for the time. And I want to respectfully suggest that since this is a zoning issue, that the councilwoman at large should not vote on this. And I want to get right into this. And this is on the DORA ordinance 2022-01, section 2 in the ordinance, the boundary map of the proposed DORA states in accordance with ORC 4301.82B1. The boundaries of the DORA are depicted in the map provided in Exhibit A. The application's Exhibit A is an overhead photograph, not a map, and it does not depict with sufficient detail the boundaries of the DORA as described in Section 2. Thereby, it doesn't comply with ORC 4301.82B1, which states a map or survey of the proposed outdoor refreshment area in sufficient detail to identify the boundaries of the area. Also, according to Section 2, the map includes a list of the establishments that have the required Class A and D liquor permits within the area. The photograph, not a map, in Exhibit A does not have a list of the required Class A and D liquor permits within the area. Therefore, Exhibit A is not in compliance. Section 2 also, it lists the address ranges of the West Broad Street running from the proposed DORA, running from 8 to 115. That is Domino's Pizza at 8 West Broad Street to Pizza Hut and Handle Vision Center at 115 West Broad. The overhead photograph in Exhibit A shows areas that are well beyond the addresses that are in the range for the proposed DORA. In Section 3, nature and types of establishments, the last sentence reads, examples of the retail, restaurant, service, and institutional establishments located in the DORA. There follows a list that includes Rite Aid at 325 West Broad Street, which is not seen in Exhibit A photograph or within the address range of the proposed DORA given in Section 2. Also in Section 3, nature and types of establishments. McDonald's, 20 West Canal Street, does not exist. There is McDonald's at 20 North Canal Street. Also in the address ranges in Section 2, 20 North Canal Street is listed, but the address is not seen in the Exhibit A photograph. Section 5, land use and zoning, references ORC 4301.82B4. Evidence that the use of land within the proposed outdoor refreshment areas are in accordance with the master zoning plan or map of the municipal corporations or township. There are 2 Exhibit Bs. Neither Exhibit B have lines drawn showing the proposed outdoor refreshment area boundary. The Exhibit B labeled official zoning map of DORA shows areas that are not listed in Section 2, which is the proposed DORA area. It depicts an area running from Wyndham Road in the west to River Street in the east with Liberty Street on the south edge, to River Street in the east with Liberty Street on the south edge. The second Exhibit B, labeled Newton Falls Plan Downtown Land Use, it depicts an area running from Wyndham Road in the west to a small section of Broad Street across the East River. And it has Bridge Street on the north edge and Liberty Street on the south edge. Both Exhibit Bs are incorrect, since Section 2 lists the address ranges from 8 West Broad Street to 115 West Broad Street as the only addresses within the DORA boundary. The addresses listed in Section 2 correspond to the downtown business on West Broad Street between Canal and Center Street, which is the central business district, and both Exhibit Bs are not in compliance with ORC 4301-82B1 or 2, or 4. One Exhibit B shows the back lots of the residential section of the houses on the south side of Bridge Street. Another Exhibit B is showing the front portion of the residential lots on the north side of Bridge Street, and the institutional property, which is the police station, the fire station, and the courthouse. Neither Exhibit B have lines drawn showing in sufficient detail the boundaries of the DORA, as stated in Section 2, thereby not complying with ORC 4301-82B1 and possibly 4. While looking at several other communities' DORA applications and maps, I was always clearly able to see the DORA boundaries. Also, all of them were maps and not overhead photographs with nothing designated on them. There were distinctly drawn lines clearly showing the boundaries on these other applications that match what was described elsewhere in their application. Well over 30 years ago, I quit drinking alcohol. And because I'm an individual who knows well the difficulties that alcohol can bring into a life, I tend to avoid events and places with alcohol. With talk about the DORA zoning area being near the rivers and operating when the downtown shops were closed, I did feel some concern about it. When I was about 13 years old, I was asked to be a pallbearer for a boy in our neighborhood who had drowned in the East River. A number of years ago, a teenage boy drowned above the falls in the area down from Veterans Park. And recently, I was told of an incident several years ago of an adult male oil field worker who had to be rescued from the West River near the same area where the teenage boy had drowned. There is increased liability to the liquor permit holders and the village by allowing if they would allow open container consumption of alcohol where there's already a history of drownings. I checked Garrettsville DORA boundaries. They also have a river and a waterfalls, and it's located closer to their downtown than ours is. Garrettsville DORA boundaries run from State Route 88 to the Eagles Club, just past State Route 82. Garrettsville wisely excluded their waterfalls and the river walk. Thankfully, the DORA boundaries, as written in this ordinance, do not include our rivers. The DORA hours in Newton Falls are 12 noon to 11 p.m. on Sunday through Thursday, 12 noon to 2 a.m. Friday and Saturday. And other than AmVets and Mi Amigos, what other businesses open past 8 p.m.? Some DORA zones only operate 2 days a week. In historic Marietta down on the Ohio River, their hours are 4 p.m. to 10 p.m., and Marietta's DORA is considered successful, running 2 days a week. What can you do with a DORA cup? Well, a one-use cup can be filled with the alcohol beverage of your choice, and if you stay within the boundaries of the district zone DORA, you can walk outdoors and with your open container of alcohol, and if there's a green sign on a business, that means you're welcome to enter. And a red sign means you cannot enter, not with your cup. You can get rid of your cup and go into the store. Once I understood the concept, I began to wonder how this was going to help the economy of downtown businesses. if you would please indulge me and visualize with me that we are in Faces and we both purchase a DORA cup with the alcohol of our choice. And we decided to walk around town. From Faces, we cannot enter Mi Amigos because it is a DORA permit holder. And you can't go in with your cup. We walk past Mayflower Insurance Agency, likely cannot enter. We cross to the south side of Broad to Domino's, likely cannot enter. Walk to Platinum Dance Company, likely cannot enter. To Brian's Jewelry Store, likely cannot enter. The Cover Bridge Inn has a liquor permit, so we cannot enter. Church Mouse, likely cannot enter. Ed's Barbershop, likely cannot enter. Benson's BS and Collectibles, not sure. Broad Street Vintage, not sure. Fairview Acres, Mercantile, we can enter. Healthy Treasures, likely cannot enter. Pens and Needles, not sure. The Credit Union, we cannot enter. We cross the street to Pizza Hut and likely cannot enter. Handle Vision, likely cannot enter. 20 North Canal Street, McDonald's, likely cannot enter. We recross the street and start down the north side of Broad. The University Hospital building cannot enter. AmVet's Post 112, another permit holder, we cannot enter. B Squared Coffee, likely cannot enter. Joseph Discount Gifts, likely cannot enter. Chick's Beauty Shop, I'm just about done.
Okay.
Can't enter. And so we're back to Mi Amigos. And this is the important question. How many businesses do you think will not allow an open container of alcohol into the store? And if we had a survey of those businesses, we would know for certain. But as it is, I'm just speculating and guessing. So I want to thank you for your time. I want to tell you that the man who helped Garrettsville usher their DORA into existence, he told me the DORA helped a bit, but mainly more so on special days. And obviously, we are more like Garrettsville than either historic Marietta or a large college town like Kent. Thank you.
Okay, and then the other 10-minute speaker is Mrs. Julie Richards. Or,
Hey.
good thing you caught it.
Oh, always good to laugh. Oh, good evening. Julie Lemon, 609 Ridge Road, Newton Falls. I wanted to speak on the following items on the agenda, and actually ordinance 2022-01 was one of them. It's kind of hard to follow that because he did really, really good. I have spoken before and said that I am against this motion. I still feel the same way about it. I would rather our town find a niche for something we can be proud of and use to promote economic development, rather than bringing this project here. I still feel it's a bar and trouble the community does not need. And I feel that there's a lot of liabilities there as well. But like he just named the businesses, I had the question of, does council actually have a list of businesses in the community within the proposed parameters that are willing or going to participate? Is it worth the time and effort? Or could we do better as a community? Next, I would like to address item number 4, under unfinished business. This motion was tabled at the last meeting, rightfully so. The Ohio Supreme Court ruled in 2009 that any local law that contradicts its ruling on the residency requirement stated in Revised Code 9.481, that local law cannot stand. Basically, our municipality is considered a political subdivision under Section 2743.01, and the ruling of the Ohio Supreme Court supersedes our residency requirement for the city manager, which is located in Article 4, Section 1 of our charter. So tabling it to me seems like the right decision was made until the Charter Review Board can actually address that situation. I would also like to address items number 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, and 9 under new business. Now, I will say that I was a little taken back when this agenda came out because I'm like, can that happen? for numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I did some research, and I researched our charter and the ORC, and from the research I came to a conclusion. There is no place in the charter or the ORC that says the city must advertise for these positions. The charter states the requirements for each position. For example, for the law director, they have to be a lawyer in good standing in the state of Ohio for 5 years. And that's just an example. But it doesn't say anything on advertising. Is it the professional way? Yes. Is it the preferred way? Yes. Is it the law? Not that I could find. So if someone knows that answer, please tell me. I would also like to comment on number 8 and 9 on the agenda. Actually, I would like to kind of ask council and the administration a few questions. And I know you can't answer, but these are my questions. My first question is, who authorized the illegal motions that were on the last council meeting agenda? They're the same motions that are subject for removal tonight. Who authorized them? Did you, Ms. Purdy? If not the executive administrator officer, then who? The charter states in Administrative Code 121.02 that the city manager is the executive administrative officer, and that with the help of council staff, and what constitutes as council staff is the law director, the finance director, and the city clerk, along with council and the mayor. You all work together to put the agenda for this community together. They're illegal motions. They violate the charter left and right. So who authorized the illegal motions to go on? Nobody can direct the city clerk per the charter to do anything. So all 4 of them are clearly against the charter and violate multiple sections. So I'm going to ask again, who gave that A-OK for those to be put on the agenda? I have another question too. Why were they passed? Why were these motions passed? I cannot believe that anybody would allow for illegal motions to be put on the agenda. I know you guys are all you're smarter than that, every last one of you. So I ask again, how did these get on the agenda? How are they legally brought to the floor and then passed? Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Warner Lang, 510 Superior. My comments, all critical ones, pertain to ordinance number 2, which is really not an ordinance at all, but merely a set of recommendations, ones that go far beyond just setting meter prices and penalties. There are at least 2 recommended rules that violate established laws. The first one, that arbitrarily disallows the opt-out option. You have no legal authorization to deny residents their choice in this crucial matter, and you certainly have no moral authority to do so. After all, the golden rule does not say that those with the gold make the rules. Nor do you have any legal authorization to force a smart meter on property when sold. You certainly have no right to use intimidation and coercion, threatening to shut off water service to those who resist installation. That threat, explicitly contained in this letter received by me and many, many others in this community, borders on extortion, and it certainly violates Ohio law regarding coercion. Whoever is responsible for composing and authorizing this nasty letter
and it is highly doubtful that its signatories are its authors. Whoever is responsible for this vile threat owes our community a sincere apology. A letter of resignation would be better. You cannot legally, let alone ethically, shut off water service to non-delinquent customers. That threat is an unprecedented outrage. In my 34 years of residency in Newton Falls, I have not experienced a local administration more abusive than this one. And that's saying a lot. The residents of this hard-pressed and much-abused community need and deserve good public servants, not agents of a profit-hungry, multi-billion-dollar conglomerate forcing its dangerous product down our throats.
Okay, anybody else?
Adam Zimmerman, 515 LeMay Avenue. Good evening. Tonight, let's talk about numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 under new business. Ordinances 2022-04, 05, 06, and 07. Last meeting, we heard that the goal is to not have a part-time finance director. So why are we bothering to try to remove the interim title from him? We already have a motion passed to advertise for this position. Calling a part-time finance director interim has nothing to do with continuity as expressed in the ordinance. Ordinance number 2022-04 removes the term interim from Mr. Ford's position. It states that Sergeant 4 shall have his compensation amended to reflect his promotion. What is that? What's it going to be brought up to? Does anybody have any idea? It's not mentioned in here. We also heard last week that the position shouldn't be advertised due to the appeal from our Chief Fixler. Now, if we shouldn't advertise because of that, how can we promote someone to that position full-time? I urge council to look at the numbers of officers that we have lost and will continue to lose before they profess that they are pleased with the job performance so far. The removal of interim from the law director is completely justified once you look at how he has done exactly as the mayor and interim city manager have wanted. The witch hunt is almost complete. It's time for that loyalty shown by him to be paid for. I just can't wait to see what this loyalty will cost. On the way to executive session last meeting, the interim city manager spoke to me. She said, "I still live in the township, bud." It's easy to live in the township and be city manager. She does not need to pay for the mistakes that she is making like the rest of us do. Last meeting, Mr. Bariak said, how can council advertise for this position when we do not know what they are advertising for? Now I want to ask, how can council appoint the interim city manager to full-time without knowing what it wants in a city manager? Without interviews, how does council know that Ms. Pretty is it? I urge council not to pass any of these ordinances. The mayor is attempting to take away your rights as council. Council is who hires and fires for these positions. Council has authorized the interim city manager to advertise for some of these positions. Now we see motions to repeal those motions from the mayor, not a member of council. Council also approves the rate of pay for these positions. This was bypassed for the interim finance director and the interim law director by having them sign contracts and not be city employees. Is council also willing to have this taken away from them? Also by the mayor.
You have to finish up your point. Your time's up.
Just a quick answer to Ms. Julie Lemon's question. The law director is who approves everything on the agenda. He makes sure everything is legal on the agenda. So if it made it to the agenda, it passed him. So they were legal motions last week. Thank you.
Jim Lalonde, 122 East Liberty Street. I want to address the ordinance on the electric and water meters. If you recall, on December 14th, around that meeting, I talked to you about filling a formal complaint with the Attorney General, Dave Yost, over Newton Falls utility billing practices in these water meters. Things such as the opt-out fees, not showing the $27, worth of meter fees that we pay every month, not showing the per 1,000 gallons of water that we pay, not showing what we pay per kilowatt of energy, the service charges, so on and so forth. That was assigned a case number, and Ann Davis was assigned as the case specialist. Well, on 1/3 of 22, our very own attorney Schrader responded saying he understood my complaint, but since we are dealing with public utilities and that ORC 4905.26 states complaints against public utilities must be handled by the PUCO. He then goes on to say he doesn't know where I got my monetary figures, so he asked Andrea from the billing office to submit a letter so she could explain the charges. Andrea's letter never once mentioned any of the charges in there, simply stated that there was a service charge, not the same service charge I talked about, and there were no prices given in the letter. It simply stated that whether you had the utilities or not, you would be billed for the service charge. Let's understand something here. Mr. Schrader, you told us all about your vast years of experience in law and you holding office in various places. Well, Utility Class 101 here in the city of Newton Falls would tell you we do not have public utilities. We own municipal utilities. And the PUCO for the state of Ohio will not intervene in matters concerning municipal utilities. Call them and ask to file a complaint about our utilities, and they will very quickly tell you they will not handle complaints dealing with our utilities. They will not even talk to you about that. I think that it's a shame that you told the Attorney General that, and that kind of put an end to the complaint, and that the city refused to cooperate any further with that. Where did I get my $27 figure? I called Andrea and asked her. She was very polite and gave it to me. You know, council, you've spent $3 million on these meters. And I hope, and hopefully you can, give us detailed billing. Our bills are printed outside by an outside company. Sign up for a different billing type. I looked at my cable bill the other day, and it has a line breaking down every single penny, even showing a line for 7 cents worth of tax. And then we see these threatening letters, which I still have yet to get one, come out, sign up, or we're going to shut off your water. First, it was Clara's fault. Then it was Sean and Andrea's fault. Really, it was council's fault. Because you see, to give that authority to amend or shut off policies, that falls within council's realm of their duties. Those employees do not have that authority, and they should be disciplined for taking that authority on without your giving it to them.
Okay, Mr.
Pam, where were you during all this confusion? Well, to quote you from Facebook, you said, "Not my circus, not my monkeys."
Anybody else?
My name's Doug Hastings. And Sean, the question my wife tried to ask you today,
What was the name?
Doug Hastings.
What's your address, Mr. Hastings?
What is it? It's about the water meters.
What is your address, sir? I didn't hear your address.
I don't know that I have to give it, do I?
Yeah. name it.
2384 West River Road,
Okay.
Township.
Thank you, sir.
The question she tried to ask you, sir, was why am I going to have you install this unhealthy meter and then pay you to uninstall it? That was the question, and you kept circling around it. Can you answer it, sir? That was the question. Do you understand it now?
Whoa, 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 sir, please, please. We're gonna be civil here.
I am.
Point of order. We're gonna be civil, not be yelling.
I was.
All right,
Thank you.
if that's it. Is there anybody else?
Somewhere else too.
Okay. If nobody else, reports. Start off with Mr. Sirotko. Do you have anything to report for Ward 1?
Yes, I'm just going to be brief. I attended the meeting for the finance audit admin. I also attended the TIB meeting. And I'm going to let Councilwoman Spletzer in her address go a little further on those. And also the special meeting of council regarding the backhoe and the police vehicles.
Thank you. Mr. Boriak, you have anything for Ward 2?
Yes, under economic development, I'd like to tell the public that we do have someone coming into town in the Pomida building. We're going to be making an announcement very shortly. Also, I'd like to give a shout out tonight to John Backhoe and our current chief on the community policing effort we've just instituted. They had rounded up a bunch of people that had a lot of, felon warrants. And we're going to try to deal with these kind of situations. And one other thing I'd like to say, we are committed in trying our best to bring that Dunkin' Donut to Newton Falls. The property needs remediated more. We've applied for a grant, and everybody's just waiting on what's going to happen. So we're doing, this committee's economic development team is committed to bringing the Dunkin' Donut. Whether it works out or it doesn't, I'm not sure yet, but we're trying our best. Thank you.
Ms. Betzer, you have anything for Ward 3?
Yes, I do, Mayor. I've been busy. Starting out on Monday, January 24th,
Mrs. Fletcher, could you put that mic up a little bit? Up higher. Twist it. There, thank you.
Monday, January 24th, I had a telephone call with Damon Carson. He is going to be the new owner of the Pomida building over on 534, and I got to learn a little bit about him and his business. And the name of the business is Repurposed Materials. And if anyone is interested in looking them up on the internet, you can find them under repurposedmaterialsinc.com. Now, a lot of people have asked, well, what is repurposing? And basically, it is taking a byproduct or a waste stream, such as a retired street sweeper brush, and giving it a second life as a back scratcher for horses or cattle. That's what that, that explains repurposing. Now, I do want to mention that Repurposed Materials also does have locations in Arizona, Iowa, Texas, the Carolinas, and Colorado. Later that day, Mr. Carson did send me some materials about his business, and I did share them on Facebook with a lot of you. And we were supposed to be meeting with him tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., but unfortunately, Mother Nature has canceled that. So in the next couple weeks, he said we will just be getting together and rescheduling that. And on Monday, Monday the 24th, we did have the admin audit finance meeting with Mr. Sirotko, myself, and the city manager. And we did discuss the performance evaluations that the city manager is working on instituting. One of them was a 90-day performance evaluation form. Another is a general performance evaluation form. And there was also a vehicle use log. Some other items that we discussed, I'm going to request that we'll be going into executive session later when I get to add that to the agenda, because those items I need to share more carefully and privately with my colleagues. On January 25th, we had a Park and Recs meeting. And one of the things that was definitely discussed was the annual report that we heard Ms. Nyheisel give to us. And something else that came up too was the bylaws. I did look at a couple items on the bylaws, and I see that they definitely need to be updated, because the bylaws that are still in existence say that there are 5 members on Park and Recs, and it's been cut back to 3, probably maybe sometime in 2018. And another section on the bylaws for Parks and Rec is actually in violation. It's in conflict with the Charter, Section 6, Article 6, Section 6. And on Wednesday, I attended a supervisors and department head meeting where the city manager was able to share with those individuals the evaluation forms and the vehicle log that we discussed on Monday with her. And then we went into a Treasury Investment Board meeting. Now, I will save the thorough explanation of what transpired in the Treasury Investment Board to Mr. Housley, because that's his area of expertise. But I do have a couple things from the notes that we received that I would like to share with you, and I'm going to put these on and make sure that I get things right. One of the things that we definitely discussed was the Federated Hermes Government Securities Fund. And the reason we had to discuss it was because this fund does not necessarily meet the existing policy of the city. Mr. Housley did make sure that he asked the meter company to propose recommendations for getting this straightened out. And something else that came up during the meeting was that we noted that the Fed will be probably changing the interest rates in March. And we all know that the market itself is going to be experiencing some volatility for the next few years with the way things have just been changing. One of the other things that was mentioned about that Federated Hermes Securities Fund is that it did not meet the state guidelines, and it really is something that should have never been invested in to begin with. And then we also did discuss the Newton Falls investment policy, which is, I believe, in our packets today. It will be updated. And the Treasury Investment Board guidelines. And once we do that, Mr. Housley will be submitting those off to the state auditor. And then we had the special meeting Wednesday where we just discussed the backhoe for the street department and the 2 police cruisers for the police department. And one more thing. Just yesterday, I received an auditor's report from Charles E. Harris and Associates. And I think it is extremely important to share this with my fellow council members and the public. I will tell you that they start out by telling us it's an independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on an audit of financial statements performed in accordance with government auditing standards. So with that being said, I'm going to tell you that what they were looking at was strictly the year 2020. In 2020, budgetary disbursements exceeded appropriation authority at the fund level as follows. General fund, the appropriations were $3.117 million. The disbursements were $3.121. The variance of that is $3,636. We recommend that the village monitor its budget closely to prevent disbursements from exceeding appropriations at the fund, function, and object levels. We noted that the former city manager authorized a 30% discount for residential electric bills in March 2020, the basis of which was to assist with coronavirus-related financial constraints of the residents. We noted nowhere in the council minutes, ordinances, or resolutions that council had approved the discount. We also did not note in the charter or other documentation that council gave the authority to the city manager to give this type of discount. We recommend any discounts in the future are council approved. We noted that the village used CARES Act grant money to provide discounts to residents for electric bills in March 2020. This was deemed an unallowable use of CARES Act money and was reclassified to CARES Act fund expenses for police wages per the Office of Budget Management. We recommend that the village use the grant revenue for proper purposes. In 2020, the former city manager granted, without approval from council, Christmas Eve as a paid holiday for all village employees and for employees that worked the holiday to receive a holiday pay. We noted nowhere in the council minutes, ordinances, or resolutions that council had approved the holiday. We also did not note in the charter or other documentation that council gave the authority to the city manager to grant a holiday to employees. We recommend any holidays given to the village employees in the future are council approved. We noted that the city manager purchased and distributed $60 gift cards to a village grocery store as a Christmas bonus to all village employees in 2020. We noted nowhere in the council minutes, ordinances, resolutions that council had approved the bonus. We also did not note in the charter or other documentation that council gave the authority to the city manager to give this type of bonus. We recommend all fringe benefits and employee bonuses are council approved in the future. We noted that the former city manager, without approval from council, authorized a program where all municipal employees received coffee and beverages free of charge from a local convenience store. The village maintained an account at the store which was reloaded with money on a regular basis. The cashier at the store would identify any employees who were purchasing the beverage, either by ID or by identifying a village uniform, and charge the preloaded account. We noted nowhere in the council minutes, ordinances, or resolutions that council had approved the benefit. We also did not note in the charter or documentation that council gave the authority to the city manager to give this type of benefit. We recommend the village discontinue this program or get council approval to continue the program. Now, this last item, I will say that I did look it up. In November 15th of 21, we did pass a motion allowing the $2,000 a year to be put on gift cards for the employees to have hot and cold drinks.
Thank you. Mr. Branch, do you have anything for Ward 4?
Yes, I do. On yesterday, I attended a planning and zoning meeting, and mostly what was discussed was the dog park. They added a decibel limit to the proposed ordinance. That was approved by the zoning board and will be sent to village council probably next meeting. As far as the last 2 weeks, I didn't get a whole lot done. I was quarantined for half of it, so just responding to emails and calls and everything I could do from home. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Okay. Mrs. Stemper, do you have anything at large?
Just a few things. I had a couple calls on the opt-out concerns and a township resident, so I had reached out and got details in regards to how the process went for township residents. I also attended the special meeting for the Backhoe and cruisers, and the fire board meeting. I missed the meeting, but I went to the reorganizational meeting where Mr. Nimitz was voted as chair and Mr. Montgomery as vice chair. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. All right. Mr. Housley, do you have anything for finance?
Sure, just a few things here. January 2022, We're still in the process of trying to close. We have hired a new part-time employee in the finance department. We're still looking for another part-time employee in the finance department. Also, for the utility department, we're currently in the process of evaluating and updating the utility department's policies and procedures. That includes delinquent accounts. I hope to have something in front of council soon. In addition to that, we're also looking at the billing format to see if we can be more transparent on what some of the charges are on that. I've also been receiving emails from some residents that are opposed to having a new meter put on their house. I've been responding to them and making Al aware of those residents. The Treasury Investment Board, they did meet on Wednesday, January 26th. We had a review of the city's investment policy by the Meter Investment Management Group, who specialize in working with public entities. They found that several of the investments were not compliant with the city's investment policy, and that several did not meet the city's investment objectives of safety. And I agreed with them. And upon the recommendation of selling the bond mutual fund that we had, that fund was sold. And I can tell you that in 2021, the bond mutual fund had a net realized gain of $48,000. And in 2022, it had a net realized loss of $122,000. So this amounted to a net realized loss over the last couple of years of $74,000. With that, I conclude my report.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns for the finance director?
Mr. Housley, the $122,000 from the illegal investments that we weren't allowed to be or supposed to be in, is that going to be the end of it, or is there going to be more coming out? Is that
That's the end of it.
That's the end of it. $122,000
Right.
by our previous administration. You weren't here, were you?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, if not, then we'll move on to the law director, if you have anything to report.
Yes, I'll try to be as brief as I can. I know Chris Immel had indicated we do a report on where the prosecution was and what we've been doing. So we've got approximately 50 new felony cases that were filed already just in 2022, in the last month and 2 days. Since we've taken over, only 2 felony cases charged were not bound over to the grand jury. We're attempting to get that done so that people, if you're going to commit a crime and it's a felony, you're going to have to face the consequences. Approximately 175 new traffic cases have been filed already this year in 2022, a month and 2 days. Approximately 500 total cases are open at this time. We're also working to clear a backlog of a review of reports and warrants on different cases. We're coordinating with law enforcement and the county departments to ensure accountability and justice is being sought in all cases filed and the victims and the community are protected. That's why we're going forward with the felonies and sending them down to the county prosecutor instead of trying to resolve them here. We had to open files for cases in 2021 that there were no files open for or that we could locate in order to review and properly prosecute the cases. We streamlined the filing of charges and file management. We're working to separate the reliance on court files for prosecution work to maintain the integrity of and independence of the judiciary branch. The past practice was to use court files as the prosecutor files and for pretrials and trials. You can imagine what that looks like to a defendant when the court and us are using the same file. A lot of people don't feel like they're getting a fair shake because it looks like there's too much cooperation between the prosecution, who's on the one side, and the judiciary, which has to be neutral. So we think that doing that makes it clear that the judicial branch is in fact independent It has been, it's just been an appearance thing. All files have been moved to our offices for security, and at the court's direction, we're working with the court to get to a paperless filing system. That allows the police, the sheriff's deputies, and the patrolmen, Ohio State patrolmen, to do everything electronically, which as an older guy is a pain when you first have to learn how to use the computers, but once you do, you find out it makes your job a whole lot easier, and it'll be much more efficient. On the general side, we decided we didn't need a secretary that you had paid $16,000 a year for, plus PRS contributions. We decided to do all the cases and not have outside counsel fees. So what I'm trying to get to is what we're saving you. $16,000 a year amounts to $2,053 a month saved. Outside counsel fees last year, that's 2021, was $123,239, or $10,267 a month for outside counsel. Your expense since we took over on outside counsel is $0. We haven't used any. The county, I've been working with the assistant prosecutor Danzo. He and I both agree that the better practice would be to have an intergovernmental agreement so that when the county pays $16,000 a year to assist with the prosecution of the township cases that are in the Newton Falls Municipal Court, that money comes to you, not to the law director. That has been the practice in the past. So that's another 16 grand that we're not saving you. It's actually going to come in, and hopefully you can use it for the law department. We're also working on saving $1,000 a month for law books that were purchased by the previous city manager that nobody uses. You got a copy of Oger over there, it's costing you $1,000 a month. We're trying to get you out of that contract. Might take a little while, but we're working on it. We're also working on terminating a Westlaw contract of $755 a month because we have all the resources for research and drafting in-house. We don't need the Westlaw. So if you add all that together, we think we're currently saving you about $21,673.99 a month. Now, what we're doing is expensive because we have 3 different lawsuits going on. We have all the efforts to clean up what happened in the past. You heard from Councilman Tessa Spetzler about the auditing end of it. There's a lot more we're trying to clean up. We haven't calculated, since we have to do a little research to figure this one out, but on your insurance policy, you have a $25,000 deductible that applies to defense. So every time there's a lawsuit that the insurance company files, you're paying 25 grand. In 2021, there were 3 different lawsuits that the insurance company was involved in. Assuming that you had a $25,000 deductible for all 3, and we don't know that yet, we have to make sure, that's another 75 grand that you're not going to have to pay because we're trying to do as much as we can in-house. If that turns out to be the case, that'll be about another $6,250 a month we're saving you. But I can't guarantee that you did that because we have to research and find out exactly what those were. But that's an example of why it's been so difficult to figure out what the law department was costing you. Most people thought it was the salary of the law director plus his benefits. And it turned out it was a whole lot more than that. So that's what I wanted to bring up in terms of a report. I'll keep you advised as things go on. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I do need a short, and I hope because of the impending snowstorm, it's very short, executive session because I want to bring you up to date on 3 cases, and I do have a personnel type issue I want to discuss. It doesn't involve disciplining or hurting anybody. It's just a personnel type thing that I discovered while doing some research that I think we ought to talk about.
Any questions, comments, concerns for the law director?
I just have one.
Mr. Barr, you have the floor.
Tonight we heard, sir, from an independent auditor that has no skin in the game, whatever. An outside auditor, is that what you said, Mrs. Spletcher? But I can remember, sir, when I asked these same questions of our previous law director, and he said, well, it's in the budget. It's in the budget. He does his things, Mr. Lynch does things a little bit different, but it's in the budget. I think there's more things that are going to come out yet, sir, as we go. I want the public to know that these few things that are here tonight that the auditor found, but there's a lot more. It takes time to right the ship, and I don't mind anybody wanting to know the truth, but I want them to know the truth. Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything for the law director? No.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mrs. Pretty, do you have anything from the city manager's report?
Yes, just a few things to go over. Within your packets, you have the documents for the Special Charter Review Commission. So during this session, there's going to be some time allotted for you guys to make your decisions. There was for lack of a better term, a vote form in there so you could vote for who you wanted for the charter review. And then the offices, we have pretty much completed the move of the offices. There are a few things that we have to finalize on, but most of them have been moved. The finance department is now part of the utility office. Then there was an issue on utility bills themselves. We had a number of complaints from utility customers in reference to their payments. After we reviewed it, it was discovered that if the customer did not change the address for the utility office to 612 West Broad, the payment was not getting forwarded to the city and it was put back into the customer's account. So we have since tried to correct that with individuals to get them to correct, because they were making direct deposits into, but they were using the wrong address. They were using our old address or the annex building instead of our current address. And also, I filed a complaint against the bond for Baseline LLC. If you remember, they were the company who was fixing sidewalks here in town after the company came through and laid the 5G cable. This was, obviously the insurance carrier rejected it, so I've turned it over to the law director for him to get further in depth with the contracts and all the documentation that we had. The bad part about it is we had no agreement in place with this Baseline to fix these sidewalks. So somehow we're gonna have to work through that, because there's probably still about $200,000 worth of sidewalks that have to be fixed. Then drug-free workplace, we received word from the Bureau of Workers' Compensation that our successful participation in the drug-free safety program at the advanced level has earned us a 7% rebate on our premiums for workers' comp. And then obviously snow removal, we're still removing snow. I know Harry and his crew were down at one of the bridges trying to remove snow off the bridges down there this morning. We also had the residents at New Day Discovery clean some of the sidewalks leading to the school and the bridges. After shoveling, they will go back and salt the areas. So they've been trying to work with them as volunteers because they need community time. So they've been working with them to get some of that stuff done. Then also we had the staff meeting, as Councilwoman Slitzer indicated. Everybody was given different forms to start the review process. So if we're going to look at potential raises by April, that we have the supervisors complete some evaluations on individuals. I have started getting some of those back. We're conducting civil service test. We're accepting applications for the civil service test. They can be turned into Kathy for that. I met with our P&C carrier this past week regarding the renewal. We had a 3-year rate guarantee, so luckily this is our 3rd year, so we don't have to do anything with that renewal for the P&C. So all the cases and stuff that Al had mentioned at this point do not affect our premium because we're in that 3-year rate guarantee. We do have a couple of policies renewing. In May, we have a pollution policy, which is the gas tank over at the street department. We also have our life insurance policy renewing in May, and also a cyber policy. We're going to have to look at the cyber policy because they're getting a little bit more strict on those policies about what type of protections you have. And obviously with the utility department and billings and protected information there, we're going to have to look at our protections here to make sure that we comply with that policy. Also, I wanted to let everyone know, I was looking at the Gardner-Clara contract. We were able to extend the appointments until 2/17 of this month. I addressed some issues with missed appointments. I've been hearing again that they had some missed appointments and we're not calling people, so I did address that issue with them. And in reviewing the contract, I want everybody to understand that this contract was signed in, I believe, early 2021. And within the contract, it says scheduling. Clients shall work with Aclara SGS on appointment scheduling efforts, including providing enforcement language for communication materials that require residents to comply with appointment schedule efforts and shut off notices. So within the contract that was signed, it says that we are to do that if the appointments are not being scheduled. So to comply with that contract, we had to send out those notices. So I just want everybody to be aware of that. And, you know, there's other things within the contract. I don't think the contract was the best benefit to the city. It truly was not, but at this point it is a signed contract and we have to deal with the terms of it. So, and that concludes my report.
Ms. City Manager, can you give a little bit more clarification on what you mean by there was no agreement on the sidewalks? I mean, this summer was a mess, and this company would show up, and between Mr. Lynch not telling us, you know, I know numerous times some of the business had to close their doors because this company just showed up.
Right.
You know, I talked to Mr. Stempert at times, and he wasn't filled in. So how are they working on our sidewalks? I thought they were supposed to be bonded. They made a mess up there. We were supposed to be looking into to see if we were going to be able to collect off of a bond. So there was no contract for them? How did that?
No, what happened was the signed contract was with the 5G cable company. Mm-hmm. That's the contract we had signed. Baseline was a subcontractor to that company, so therefore there was no agreement with Baseline when they came in to fix the contracts. Now, we do have some emails that went back and forth that, you know, I gave to Al to kind of review to see if maybe that could make it a potential contract because of the work that they had been doing. But we had no formal contract.
In the contract with the company, the 5G company, was there anything in their contract that they were going to maintain or fix what they messed up?
No, no.
This is the paperwork on that issue. It's like an inch thick. And we have an expert in insurance company law and bonding that I've got working on this. So we're trying to get them to have to pay anyway. Hopefully the emails back and forth will be sufficient. It's not unusual when an insurance company tells you they aren't going to pay. They kind of exist not to pay you. So we're working on it. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, I just don't see how the 5G company can come in and make a total mess of the sidewalks and just leave it that way. Mm-hmm. Okay, does anybody else have anything for the city manager, Mr. Boria?
I want to backtrack real quick with just one question. If we don't go with this contract, are we in jeopardy, like I thought we told the people before, that we will lose the $3 million with Huntington Bank? They will call in the loan?
Right, we cannot just, the question was before is if we sold the meters. Huntington has indicated that they would have to be paid their $3 million before we could even sell the meters. So yes, they would call the loan before.
And we have researched it, and we're not gonna get out of this, right? We gotta make the best of it.
Correct.
I wanna say one thing, and if I'm wrong, I'd like asking a question. Within 3 to 5 years, I've been told that Ohio will be installing all these meters everywhere. I'm not sure of that, but I've heard this from some of the people out in the township. With these meters is what I'm trying to say is that, have we had any people that have them saying whether their bills are going up or down? I heard some people said their water actually has gone down a little bit.
Yes.
Okay, all I want to get that out there to the public.
The contract that was signed was definitely not in the best interest of the village.
Anybody else?
Well, what we're saying is the meters, we think, are in the best
Correct.
interest of the village.
It's the
but the
contract
contract
itself.
is horrible. Sorry to interrupt.
Anybody else have anything for the city manager? No. Okay, if not, Ms. Spetzer had a lot there to report, so I'm not gonna go into anything that she reported. I'm just gonna put out there that I've been in contact with some state and local elected officials to help in the cleanup process for the property on Route 5 and 534 for the Dunkin' Donuts. As reported by individuals, it's not dead. The process, it has to be cleaned up first, and then we can enter into a fair contract for both the community as well as the owner. The old contract was dead because it wasn't fair for the community. We were going to eat the cost of everything. But there needs to be some cleanup done, and I've been talking to some individuals to see if they can help speed it up a little bit. Secondly, been in conversation with elected officials to try to bring some needed funds for the community center and the work being done there. And then lastly, looking to put a resolution on next week or the next meeting, not next week, but the week after, and so I'm getting information to recognize and acknowledge our little taggers, players, coaches, cheerleaders, parents, everybody in the community involved there for a great season that they had during a difficult time, and we're proud of them. A lot of the kids are in basketball right now, so that's why it's drug out so long, but I'd really like to have something positive the next meeting and have them up here, and just that's about it. Changes to tonight's agenda. I don't believe we have anything other than...
Yes, Mayor.
I don't think we have to put the executive under now. We'll probably just have, at the time, see if there's a motion to go in, correct?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
need
you
to
can wait
put
till the end and have a motion to go into executive
Yeah,
session.
we don't have to, I don't believe, change.
Change to agenda? We don't need to change to the agenda, sir?
Well, hold on a
There's
second.
no executive session on there, I don't see.
Good catch. Yeah, I guess, wait a minute, I did see motion, page 13 has a motion to recess to executive session, but it doesn't indicate the reasons.
Yeah, there's nothing on there. It's
Yeah,
just-
you might as well do it now then.
All
Good
right.
catch, sorry about that.
Okay. Change to it, the agenda. Do we need somebody to,
I'll make a motion that we go into executive session over personnel. Is that what we wanted to do, Mr. Schrader?
Well, personnel and meeting with an attorney to discuss pending litigation.
And meeting with the attorney to discuss pending litigation. I make that motion. Is that all that we need to?
okay, Ms. Spetzer, does that include whatever you had?
All of the items I would check would be under the personnel matters.
All right, so one, and then do we have anything other than one?
Well, you probably ought to-
3.
I'm sorry, indicate the subsection, whether it's all of them, or just appointment, or just employment, or just demotion, or...
It would be all of the subsections except appointment.
Wouldn't we be talking about the Charter Review Commission? That would be an appointment.
That's a good
Aren't we
thing.
voting on that?
Oh, I thought we were doing
No,
that out
that's
here.
separate.
I couldn't hear you,
Separate,
Mrs.
okay.
Spitzer. What is that talking about?
Charter
Mr. Branch, what did you say,
review.
sir?
The Charter Review.
Okay. That's out here, that's not in there?
It's separate.
Okay,
Yeah, there's time allotted in here for you to do it separately.
okay. All right, so do we have a second on this?
Second.
Okay, Mrs. King was call for the roll.
Sirocco?
Yes.
Bariak?
Yes.
Spletzer?
Yes.
Franchi?
Yes.
Stempert?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll add that to the agenda. Okay, approval of previous minutes.
So
do we-
moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so you want to approve the January 19th, 2022, as well as 22 special meeting together? Okay, so who was the first? Ms. Betzer, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Granchi, do we have any discussion?
Should we do them together if I'm gonna have to abstain from the?
They're together. What's that?
Should we do them together if I'm gonna have to abstain from the special meeting since I wasn't there?
I mean, you could, I mean.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, if there's no discussion on either one, if you don't have issue with it, or, you know, if we're just, Mrs.
Are you
King-
gonna abstain from both of them, sir? Is that what you're saying? Just the one?
If they're together, then
Well,
I'd
if
have
we're
to.
doing it together to just, for the
Oh,
sake
okay.
of
That's what I was
time.
asking.
Well, you can do them together, and he can indicate he abstains from the special meeting, but not the other one. I mean,
Okay,
that way you can do them together, he can abstain, everything's fine.
okay. All right.
Bariak?
Yes.
Spletzer?
Yes.
Franchi?
Yes to the 19th, abstain for the 26th.
Stempert?
Yes.
Sirocco?
Yes.
Okay. Minutes approved. Public hearings, ordinance 2022-01, if Mrs. King could read.
An ordinance approving the creation of a designated outdoor refreshment area for the consumption of alcohol in specified public areas of downtown Newton Falls and enacting regulation therefore.
Okay, anybody from the public like to discuss or weigh in on this? Mr. Richards?
Yeah, just very briefly, what I touched on before, the exhibits in that ordinance, none of them are legal. None of them meet the ORC requirements. And so that definitely, those exhibits have to be brought into compliance with the ordinance itself because they're supporting, but they don't do anything. And so to pass it with those exhibits, the ORC was very specifically about what has to be in those exhibits. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, if not, then number 1 is closed. Number 2 is ordinance 2022-02, if Mrs. King could read.
An ordinance setting electric and water meter costs associated with the installation of the smart meters.
Okay, would anybody like to be heard on number 2?
Jim Milano on 210 East Liberty Street. So we all know we're stuck with this contract, but the question is, what do council do to make it better? Absolutely nothing. Tessa, you know that I consider you my friend and I respect you for your military service. I stood with you fighting to win your seat on council, but during that whole time, you talked a huge talk to hundreds of folks in town, and you stood there with us getting referendum signatures about these meters. You told us that you got over 200 signatures alone. You told people and told us to tell a lot of people, do nothing with the opt-out until council figures it out and gets an ordinance straightened out. Well, now council figured it out, and all of a sudden you're standing firm with council saying no one else can opt out. Except for 2 meetings ago, we allowed one more opt-out. That means to me and every person that you told that to, that you told us that we wanted to hear what we wanted to hear, and from here on out, that your word to us will be no good. Council set the opt-out rates high enough and badgered enough people with the shut-off threats that the opt-outs are now down to, I hear, 13. That's because many folks in this town cannot afford another $50 a month for 6 months at this time of the year. You know, when I was on council, I was the only one who voted no on a water rate hike. And Pat Lashock reminds me of that many times. I did that because I said at that time, this village was going to come to a point where people had to decide if they could take their medicine, buy their food, or pay their bills. And that was because at that time, the Tribune had did an article, and the 3-county area, we were the highest in all utility categories. Mr. Copeland, maybe that would be a good story for the Tribune to look into doing again. There's no doubt that what I say or anyone else says here tonight is going to change your vote. But think about that senior friend of mine who has beaten cancer, now having those transmitting units in their house. Will that cancer come back? Think about the possibility of increased bills. The elderly lady who told me in tears this summer while she was signing the petition that if her utilities go higher, she's going to have to sell her house that she's lived in her whole life. Yes, we're stuck with the contract, but council, you could have done a hell of a lot better.
Okay, Mr. Luana,
And a lot more
wrap up your time.
than just bend over and allow people to opt out.
Okay, anybody else on number 2? Okay, number 3 is ordinance 2022-03, if Mrs. King could read.
And now for then ordinance, amending ordinance establishing sewer rates for the Newton Falls utility customers.
Anybody like to speak on number 3? Okay, if not, then number 3 is closed and the public hearings are closed. Under unfinished business, again, ordinance number 1 is ordinance 2022-01.
An ordinance approving the creation of a designated outdoor refreshment area for the consumption of alcohol in specified public areas of downtown Newton Falls and enacting regulation therefore.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this?
Yes, Mayor, may I have the floor?
You have the floor, Mr. Granchi.
Mr. Schrader, everything that was mentioned by Mr. Richards, is that true and accurate, or is our application good to go, in your opinion?
Well, actually, it's the first I heard that criticism. I was going to ask the police chief, because it's the police that have to enforce it, if he can, you know, as long as the police can figure out where somebody's allowed to have an open glass of alcohol and where they're not, that's what's really important. But I know you've been spending a lot of time talking about this. I'd like to do a little research to see exactly what the statute does say in regard to the legal description. I did notice there was a list of 4 alcohol permit users somewhere in there. If it has to be in that particular exhibit, then we'll take it to statute. There's a couple things you could do. You could pass it with an understanding you're probably going to have to amend it if you feel there's an urgency to this. You could table it until we do that research, and that's up to you. All I can tell you is I don't know that much about these things. I do know that the legislature has been expanding the area that you can do this in, so apparently the legislature seems to think there is some value. But those are, I guess, the 2 options. Pass it tonight and consider we may have to amend it later once I do some research on that issue. Or hold it until we get the research done. It's up to you.
My second question for you would be, excuse me, some of the signatures that are on it from city officials, such as the police chief, are no longer employed with us. Is that going to hinder our application process, or would we have to restart, anything like that?
No, you have, you know, we're all human, people die, emergencies happen. The individual signed in his position as a public official at that time You now have somebody else that's in that as an interim. If anything further needs to be signed, he can do it. So no, it doesn't.
Okay.
Okay, would somebody else
I
like
would
to
like to
address?
speak.
Ms. Blitzer?
As I got to thinking about this over the weekend, I started wondering, why isn't Park and Recs involved? To me, this is something that Park and Rec should be involved in, and perhaps, working with the residents to come up with, some compromises. A Park and Rec meeting is a much smaller, much more, intimate type of meeting. So I think it would be wise for us to table this until we do have more time to gather some research and let Parks and Rec weigh in with their thoughts. So I would be willing, this is early in the year, it's early February. I would say it would be nice to table it until maybe the second meeting in March. Give us some time to look at things.
Mr. Borak, did you also have something you wanted to say?
I have had an understanding of some of this, but there are questions that have come up now that I would support Mrs. Splitzer's motion, if she puts a motion on the table, at least till I can answer the constituents and the people of this town fully and accurately. Then I can't make my mind up when there are questions. And I'm not going to I can't put the law director or anybody on there. I'd like to, if it's tabled, I will support it.
Excuse me.
Can
Can I just read one section? After we went through the public hearing, according to the Department of Commerce, it says no, not later than 30, but, not earlier than 30, but not later than 60 days after the initial publication of notice, the legislative authority must approve or disapprove the application in an ordinance or resolution by an affirmative majority vote. So we waited the 30 days and we put it on. We're going to run out, if we table it, we're going to run out of 60 days. So if you table it, I think you're going to have to start all over again.
That would be correct, yeah, you'd have to start over.
Well, how long did the whole process take? The application process? It wasn't very long, correct?
It started on October 4th with us.
But I'm saying
the application process.
Yeah, the application process wasn't a very detailed process. I mean, my own thing, I would rather have to start over and redo another application and do it correctly than to rush through it and then have a lot of questions. Mr. Richards brought up a lot of interesting points about making sure that the correct businesses are in it and a lot of things like that. I'd like to see us look at things Ms. Splitzer it says, so I don't know if it would go into tabling it or if it would go into voting no and restarting the application process. I don't know what one of you guys might.
As it stands right now, the way it's written, and with the feedback that I've had from Ward 1, I can't support it the way it's currently written. It's just too many people against it at this point.
Would if it's tabled to have more information, we're going to run out of time. So would it be better to vote it down and then have research done? I don't know. It just seems like that there's, I know Mr. Richards brought a whole line of things that seem to be very unclear or inaccurate, I would say. And Ms. Splitzer brought up things about Park and Rec and different things. So I don't know if we would be better off right now to vote it down and then start from scratch one to redo it if somebody wanted to.
Well, that's your call. I mean, the easy one is you really aren't liable if somebody does unfortunately fall off a bridge or whatever. The Supreme Court last year basically said somebody that held a party and they knew the individual had too many drinks and then the guy goes out, gets in an accident and kills somebody, that they weren't liable. So I don't know that I agree with that, but they're the Supreme Court and I'm not. So I don't think that part's an issue, but I think the other issues the gentleman raised are important, but the choice is yours. It's up to council what you want to do.
Who put together the map and the businesses? Was that a zoning issue or how did that go? I mean, that, to me, I think it needs rezoned. I mean, Mr. Rich made that very, very clear that a lot of what was on there is not. So I think that there's some things that need corrected.
Can anybody tell me when is the deadline date?
Well, we waited the 30 days to put it back on the legislation, so
We have 30 days, it sounds like.
we did, it said between 30 and 60 days it had to be passed. So we waited 30 days, we put it on, we've waited 2 weeks since its first reading.
So when is our deadline?
Mid-February?
It sounds like it's March, right? Because you said that up to
Yeah,
60 days?
that's what it sounds
Yeah.
like. It sounds
But
like
if we waited
It's
30
in
days,
March.
this is the second reading, then we'd be at around
So
44
if you
days.
did it 2 weeks ago,
But then we gotta wait the 30 days for it to go
So
into
the-
effect, so
it'd be the end
I
of
think we're beyond the time if we table it.
March. Yeah.
Okay, did you want,
Can I-
did you, Ms. Bletzer, you had a second, did you
I
want to
didn't
have
get my
anything
first.
else? Or-
Would-
I
would
did
it-
my first.
Would it be okay to table it to March 15th? Would we still be able to make,
No, because then we have to wait the 30 days for it to actually go into effect.
Right, which means it would be in effect around April 15 or thereabouts. And really, this is a summer thing. Nobody in this weather is going to be, if anybody in this weather is walking around outside with alcohol, they got a problem that we can't help them with. So I think that isn't necessarily bad. It's May or June or July before people will probably know. Watch, I'll say that, it'll be the hottest April we ever had.
But I think what I'm stuck on is it says be no more than 30, but not, no less than 30, but no more than 60. So I think we have a 30-day time period to get it passed and get it to them.
That seems about right. I'd have to look at it again to be sure, but you've done everything you need to. You had your second reading. If you wait till March and we can hurry up and get some of those issues answered, they could vote in March and
Maybe the first
it'll be
meeting.
tight, but we can get it done.
we have a meeting March 15th, or March 1st and March 15th, I believe, are the 2 March meetings.
So March 1st.
March 1st and the 15th.
Would that still give us enough time if we did it March 1st?
I don't think so, but I may be thinking, I may be looking at it wrong.
Hey, Ms. Stemper, did you want to weigh in here?
I just wanted to clarify with Al, I had previously asked, is there any concern with me voting on this ordinance?
No,
Thank you.
the only thing you have to abstain from is anything that would increase your financial position. So you can't vote on a wage increase for your husband. You can't vote to allow $1,000 in coffee or whatever the heck, you know. But you're a councilwoman. Everybody on this council is going to have some so-called conflict anytime you vote on zoning. You might be voting on a zoning that's next to your house. So no, you don't have an obligation to abstain. There's a narrow area of things where you could abstain because you feel like you should, but you're not compelled to. So the only thing you can't do is vote on something that includes extra money for the household. And this thing gets enforced by the police, not the zoning folks.
Thank you. I know we had previously had this conversation, but I just wanted it on record.
Okay, so do we want to table until the first meeting of March, until we have the map looked into, and what other issues do we have?
Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
From the way I just, excuse me, from the way I just understood that, is we had to wait 30 days before the first reading went on. This is the second reading, so that would put us 14 days out from the 30 days. That'd be 44 days. So we can't push it into March. It just mathematically doesn't work. We can go, maybe if we push it, we can get to the next regular meeting, but we cannot go into March. It will not. That will be over the time limit.
Okay.
Because this is the second reading. We couldn't do the first reading until after the 30 days.
I mean, does somebody want
Here,
to, Mr. Barrick?
I'd like to ask the law director one question.
Yes, sir.
If we come back by today is February 2nd, right?
Yeah.
If we come back, can you have this research, sir, by the second meeting in February?
I'll do my best. I think we can, barring
I had a question tonight where I was going to talk about amending it myself, sir. I wanted to bring that issue to you. about the boundaries. I had problems with the boundaries. I wanted to make sure that I might even put an amendment tonight, but I'd like to, if we can get something real quick, every councilman get their concerns and the public's concerns straightened out so we know where we're going, honestly and transparently. I would appreciate that.
I can do the boundaries on the list. I heard some good ideas tonight about, sending it past planning and zoning, see what they think, send it to the Parks Board, see what they think. I don't know if we have time for that. If you guys have time to do that, that may not be a bad idea. So yes, I'll have a list of things to do. And
we want to table it until the next meeting.
I make a motion to table it till the next meeting, which is February 16th.
Okay.
Second.
We got a second. Mrs. King, let's go for the roll.
Spletzer.
Yes.
Franchi.
Yes.
Stemper.
Yes.
Sirocco.
Yes.
Bariak.
Yes.
Okay, table till the next meeting. All right. Okay, number 2, ordinance 2022-02.
An ordinance setting electric and water meter costs associated with the installation of the smart meters.
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to begin.
Okay, you have the floor.
Back when we were doing the referendums on these smart meters, I did work. And I worked my rear end off getting the signatures that were needed. And I'll tell you, I really do truly feel that we fought the good fight. We fought it as hard as we could, but unfortunately we lost. We put all of our marbles in one basket and took it to the Supreme Court, and we lost. When Mr. Lynch created the opt-out amounts, I knew what he had done was wrong. And it took me months of fighting with Joe Fritz, David Lynch, and a couple others to get things on agendas and try to get some of this stuff straightened out. Now, I did not have a crystal ball. Back when I was telling people, don't do anything because I knew what had been done was wrong, I did not have a crystal ball. I really didn't. When the committee put together the opt-out cost analysis and the city manager did the opt-out recommendations, I felt that was the best that we could come up with as a compromise. I was hoping to come up with something that everybody could live with. Is everybody going to be thrilled and happy? No, probably not. But to me, this was the compromise. Those that are opting out are paying $5.50 a month, as opposed to the $29 and something that originally that Mr. Lynch wanted. So I just want to say that I feel this was a compromise.
Is that all you have, Ms. Spitzer?
Yes.
Okay, somebody else like the floor? Mr. Pariak?
Just one word on this real quick. The way it was handled was wrong. I had an attorney, a law firm, a very excellent law firm, said, you're going to lose. You want to spend $10,000, $20,000 and fight it? Well, it happened to what it is, we lost. All I want to do right now, one of the main reasons, and I'm going to be very sincere with the public, in the initial phase of this, there was so much fat on that contract, I felt that we could have done a lot of work ourselves and not put furnaces and LED lights in and let our electric department do some, it might have been a good thing. It soured the taste in everybody's mouth the way it was handled. I had no control in that. But I want to try to go the best way we can now and move this village forward. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Can I just clarify, Ms. Blesser said it's a $5 and some odd cents opt-out they pay per month. Is that, I thought it was more. Is that?
I thought it was more.
It's
And would
the
that be
cost,
the-
it's the cost of the meter itself along with the 550. So they do have to pay for a replacement meter if they've opted out.
Okay,
So,
and that would be the same in the village, township,
correct,
it's across the board, same fee?
correct.
Mr. Mayor, may I have the floor? Mr. Mayor, may I have the floor?
Sure, you have the floor, Mr. Granchi.
Mr. Schrader, going forward from here, if this is something, I understand there's a lot of legal and ethical intricacies when it comes to this legislation. If there's something that we could do going forward, perhaps if we are able to eat the cost of these meters, if it's successful and everything, and we end up generating more revenue because of this or something to that effect, would we be able to make an ordinance or a resolution authorizing refunds to the people who paid for the meters if we were able to eat the cost of the small handful of people who did opt out?
Yeah, that's something you could consider if you had the money to do it. So, yeah, there's, you know, council isn't locked into always going exactly straight down the road. You can, sometimes there's a need to take a detour or modify things. Just like Tessa said, she did what she thought was right at the time. And the most honest of public officials are going to tell you, sometimes things change, and so you have to change your direction. So yeah, you have the right to do that if you have the money to do it. And I know Sean was working on taking a look at your different utilities, because I know you got one, and I forget which one it is, that has a really healthy budget, and you got another one that's not so healthy. And so the administration may have, I hope I can say this long term, some ideas about that, but that's going to be based largely on what Sean comes up with on the financial end. And that's all I think I should say about it now, unless Sean wants to add anything.
My question was more about the legal and ethical side of that, if we were able to do that type of legislation subject to funding. So that was more my question.
The legal answer is yes, you can.
Okay.
The ethical stuff is up to you.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I'll help if it's a legal ethical thing. I've been on that committee for years. But as far as ethics and morals, you have to do what you think is right.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Granchi?
No, that's all.
Okay. Mr. Sirotko, did you have anything on this?
No, I don't.
Okay, would anybody like a second address before we call for the roll? Okay, if not, whenever Mrs. King is ready to call for the roll.
Granchi?
Yes.
Stempert?
Yes.
Sirocco?
Yes.
Bariak?
Yes.
Spletzer?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance passes. Okay, number 3 is ordinance 2022-03.
And now for then ordinance, amending ordinance establishing sewer rates for Newton Falls utility customers.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Would you like the floor, Mr. Boriak?
We had a very competent study done on the sewer rates. And we were told that this is what we got to have. We tried to go very easy on the residents and let the commercial is that right, Mr. Housley? Let the commercial users catch up with us, in other words, to make it more equitable?
Yes.
Okay, I want to answer one other question too. We did have a water study done years ago. Why we didn't raise the rates like we should have, I wasn't on council, 1% or 1.5% a year, rather than come down and start banging people with a 5, 6. That's all I want to say. I don't know why. Maybe we can ask some of the people that were on council at the time. But we're trying to take it as easy as we can. I understand the pandemic. I understand the position.
Anybody else?
I'll just chime in and say, you know, this is a rate that we've been paying since August or September. So the reason it is a now for then ordinance is because when Pam came on board and I showed her the sewage rates, how they were hidden in the budget book, this was something that she took, you know, one of the first corrective actions to take care of. So we've been paying these rates since August or September. And this is just righting the ship and saying that it's going to be, you know, done the right way from now on.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, if not, whenever Mrs. King is ready to call for the roll.
Stempert,
Yes.
Soroka,
Yes.
Bariak,
Yes.
Spitzer,
Yes.
Grianchi.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance passes. Okay, number 4 is tabled, so I'm on to new business.
No, we still haven't finished.
Ordinance 2022-04, whenever Mrs. King is ready to read.
An ordinance removing the interim title from the chief of police.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes. I guess my question is, this by no means, I guess it's for the law director, maybe city manager, this by no means is meaning that we are hiring permanent people. Is that correct? We're
No.
just removing the
Yeah, it is correct. You're not hiring permanent people, but you are taking the interim stuff away, the interim title. So, no, you're not making it permanent by doing that. You can continue, you know, there's options, and I think I laid them out in a letter. You could instruct the city manager to advertise for any of those positions. You could decide to just take the interim away. It's all up to you what you want to do.
Okay, I guess another question is, and I don't know who this, on section 1 under the police chief, and I hope nobody gets me wrong on this, I have no problem with any of the job that any of these people have been doing, but under section 1 it said that shall be promoted to chief of police and shall have his compensation amended to reflect promotion to chief of police. That kind of almost sounds like it's...
Excuse me, can we stick with one ordinance at a time?
Yeah, that's what we should, I thought that's what you were on, was still number 1, right?
Yeah, we're still on number 1, which is the, oh, it is
The
the
title.
police chief, isn't it? Sorry, never mind. Just ignore me.
It's okay, everything's all
Thinking it
right.
was the other one.
Okay. Yeah, I wrote myself a mental note here, and I says, you know, if this helps, what this means is that this will bring some needed stability until a proper application process can be done at a proper time.
Right, like I say, I don't see this on any of the other ones. That's why my question.
Okay,
Can I?
yeah.
I might have an answer, but go ahead, Julie.
You can answer now.
I noticed that too. This is the one and only the one and only ordinance that did specify some type of compensation.
Can I ask a question? Can it just be the D-pay? Because when they take over a position, they go up to that D-pay level.
That's why I assumed, because they're an individual that is replacing somebody that, like a D-pay.
They get that D-pay when they take on a position.
Okay, so then it's still up for applications, resumes?
Correct, correct.
Okay,
They
thank
would
you.
just take over the D-pay level.
Okay. Miss Stemper.
Okay.
Do we have something?
What? Did you have
I
something?
do. There's actually a specific ordinance that gives the chief of police a specific dollar amount if someone takes over that position, different than the DPA.
Different than the DPA?
And I know that when we appropriated the budget for 2022, we appropriated for a chief of police. So there is money in the budget.
Ms. Stemper, did you
Yes.
have something?
I'm not comfortable with this. I feel like we have interim, which are filling our gaps until we go through that process of transparency, collecting applications, going through the interview process, and determining who it is we are putting here permanent. So their role right now is interim. They are keeping us afloat. They're doing a good job. I'm not complaining about any of that, but their role is as an interim. I think they need to have that title. When we go through the process and show the transparency and all that, then we will have the permanent positions in place.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, you have the floor, Mr. Granchi.
I feel like semantics and verbiage is important, and if I were to just read section 1 on its own, I would be thinking that this is a straight up promotion. As far as taking away interim titles to make it look better, it doesn't change the fact that they are indeed still interims, which there's nothing wrong with. I'm an appointed councilman. I don't care, call me an appointed councilman, it's what I am. I might as well be an interim councilman until we get a permanent one in from the election. It is what it is. I don't understand the logic in any of these ordinances. It is what it is. I want to go through this hiring process. I want it to be transparent, and this, I feel like taking away the interim title takes away from the transparency, and it projects an image that I don't think that is true to life. That is my opinion.
Did you have anything else, Mr. Granchi?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Boriak, you have the floor.
We've already stated on the floor last week that until we got lawsuits and everything, the law director just said we're not stopped from taking out applications. My own personal opinion is now is not the time to go out for them. I understand semantics, but this word interim, I wanted it out of there last week until we go out. He's the chief of police, he's the finance director, and we can go out for the applications. It just, I don't care whether it's called semantics or not, I wanted the word interim out there. So they feel like they have a spare shot. In other words, it sounds better to me to have, if they want to put in for the chief of police, he can put in. He's doing the job, he's doing the job. That's all I can say. I want the words out of there. To me, it might be semantics. I want the word removed. And it's already been stated we can go for application. So what's the problem?
Anybody want a second address?
Somebody doesn't like somebody here. I think they're doing a fantastic job, but that's up to you. You vote what you want to vote. I know where I'm voting.
Would anybody like a second address?
Yes, I vote.
You have the floor, Mr. Granchi.
Just to reiterate on what I said last meeting, if not now, when? That's just, I really want to get moving forward on making sure that we have permanent positions in place. And it very well may, for all I know, all of them could end up being the permanents. And there's nothing, I have no issue with the way anyone's doing that, but as I've told people, we could have Captain America himself want to be the police chief. We could have a former president want to be, I mean, it's outlandish, but you know, we don't know who is interested in the position unless we advertise for them. And there's nothing, I don't understand for the life of me what the issue with the interim title is if you're an interim. I mean, I know the world's changing. You can't even call a private in the Army anymore. You have to call them soldier because it's apparently their rank is degrading now. I understand the world's changing, but that doesn't mean I have to like it or support it. This just seems like wasteful legislation. It really does.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, if not, whenever Mrs. King is ready to call for the roll.
Saratko?
No.
Bariak?
Yes.
Spletzer?
Yes.
Granchi?
No.
Steppert?
No.
Fails. Okay. Number 2, ordinance 2022-05.
An ordinance removing the interim title from the finance director.
We have a motion.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I like the remark. I don't have the title interim anymore. That was removed at the last council meeting, so it's a mistake.
Okay, is that the case?
Could I have?
I have the legislation here.
Can I have the floor?
Sure.
Okay, yeah, I thought we made Mr. Housley part-time without the interim. So I don't see where this one's even necessary whatsoever.
Correct.
Okay. That was, we removed that last week, Ms. City Manager.
Was it removed? Did it remove from the? No, I'm asking you. His contract, was it removed? The interim? In Sean's?
Well, I wish I knew. I don't have.
We have it over here.
Well, the title of the piece of
Did they already
legislation-
remove it?
The title of the legislation was an ordinance appointing Sean Hasley as part-time finance director and authorizing pay in terms of employment.
Okay,
So that was the title.
Well, then if council's okay with that, it's already been removed and you don't need to do it. But is that okay with you? I mean, I don't want us to have inadvertently passed something last week that you don't want. So if it's already been removed, then great, you don't need to do it.
Can I have the floor?
Yeah, go ahead.
I believe the contract we agreed upon gave us the language that we were still going out to interview and to hire a full-time finance director. And there's a time frame where he's going to stay aboard and help us transition, and so that's why the interim is not on there. He is our part-time finance director.
Yeah, that's how I remember it too, in terms of ultimately you'll be advertising and finding somebody full-time, and I think, yeah, that's my memory of that.
Can I have the floor, Mayor?
Yes.
We went through this for a month and a half or 2 months. We could keep on advertising, but we couldn't find anybody that would take the job. This man is saving us thousands and thousands of dollars and turning over all kind of things that were done underhandedly. Excuse me, I want to take that back. Not transparently for us. So I don't have any problem with him being part-time. He's saving us money. We used to have 2 people, Mr. Pikovich and Mrs. Lenarchik, that were full-time in the finance department, making pretty good money. Now we have Mr. Housley and you have one helper right now, sir, part-time.
One full-time, and we just hired a part-time.
Yeah, you just hired a part-time. And it's...
Well, I see it wasn't last meeting, it was the first meeting in January, the ordinance appointing Sean Housley as part-time finance director. So I'd like to, the ordinance for today, number 2022-05, pull it from the floor, since I sponsored it. Okay, do you have that, Mrs. King?
Yeah, but does it matter if we already had a motion and a second? Can he still pull it? Or can they withdraw their motion?
They can withdraw their motion if they want. Generally, if you're gonna withdraw something from the floor, you wanna do it before there's
Yeah.
a motion and second. So if they wanna withdraw, they
Who made
can.
the first and
Otherwise, you
second?
vote it however you're gonna vote.
Would you guys like to withdraw your motion since this ordinance here is really kind of irrelevant? He's not interim, he's the part-time law director, period, or finance director, period.
I will withdraw my second, or you have to withdraw your first.
What are we gonna do right now? with
Actually,
it?
Tessa, you were the first.
Just
Oh, I was the
we're withdrawing the motion so that I can pull it from the floor because
I'll withdraw my motion.
it's not necessary.
It's not necessary.
I withdraw.
Okay, thank you. All right. Number 3 is ordinance 2022-06.
An ordinance removing the interim title from the city manager.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
You have the floor.
This is the exact same concept that I was talking about. I don't see the point in it. I think she's doing great as the interim. She could be hired full-time, but until then, she's the interim, just like the law director is the interim, just like the police chief is the interim. And there's nothing wrong with that. You guys can start calling me the appointed councilman until you're blue in the face. It's not gonna bother me. It's what I am. It's what they are. That's all I have.
Can I have the floor?
Sure.
I guess it's for the law director. What difference does it actually make with the interim as opposed to non-interim on these titles?
In a number of the positions, and you know, you do what you want to do on these things. When you say interim, in some ways, it detracts from their authority. You know, some people may think, why do I have to listen to her? I can just wait her out and there'll be somebody else here before too long. The assistant prosecutors run into that sometimes as well because the defense attorneys that don't like the fact that we're not dismissing felonies are making us go through a bunch of pretrials or preliminary hearings that we would never have to go through otherwise. We're doing it because we think that to protect the public, we need to have those felonies done. So the hope on our end was if you didn't have the interim, then maybe those folks would realize these guys are going to be with us for a while, so it doesn't make sense for us to continue to have all these preliminary hearings. As to the city manager, I think it's what I just said, that, you know, interim somehow sounds like you may not be there very long, so all we got to do is wait you out. You decide what you want to do. The stability argument is a rational argument. Mr. Granchi's argument is a rational argument. That's why we have a council to vote and make a decision.
Okay, did you have anything else, Mr. Sriracha?
No, I'm good.
Okay, would anybody else like to weigh in on this?
I would. Saying that for the other ordinance, but these positions are interim, they're filling our gap until we've gone through the process. This township, or town, village, city, whatever you prefer to call it, has gone through a lot of transition, a lot of changes, a lot of mistrust. We need to be transparent, we need to move forward and go through the process, and right now, we're interim. Bad analogy, but if I'm engaged, I'm still Miss Smith. Once I'm married, I'm Mrs. It's a title, and that's the title for the position she's in.
Mr. Boriak, Ms. Spletzer, would you like to have a first? No? Anybody want a second address before we call for the roll?
Well, I'll tell you what. Did we set something in 90 days to get applications? Did we set something on that?
I want to say it was like 90
You
days.
can instruct the city manager to seek applications. You can put whatever deadline you want on it, 30 days, 60 days, whatever.
Did we pass anything? I can't remember. Did we pass anything?
No.
It
Not
didn't
from the city
pass.
manager.
No.
Can I have the floor, Ken?
Let me see real quick if Ms. Spletzer has a first address. Okay, go ahead.
I have a hard time wrapping my head around how we're going to ask the interim city manager to look for someone who could potentially replace her or be her competition in interviewing. Why is it not,
No.
on the school board, it's the treasurer. Why is it the same person going out for her own position?
No, the issue is advertising. The interviews are gonna have to be done by,
I meant advertising.
city council.
I meant advertising. That whole process, why is it going through the person who is potentially going to apply for that same position?
Well, I mean,
I
it's-
don't find that transparent. I find that kind of a conflict.
I mean, that's,
Well,
that's.
no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, that's what our charter says to do, that she does that. It has the criteria for the position in there. They put it out there. Individuals that feel that they are qualified, they'll apply, and then we'll interview.
Yeah, it's mainly, you can't order the city council clerk to do it according to that goofy charter that we have. And that's one of the things I want to discuss in executive session. Your charter makes no sense when it comes to this stuff. You got somebody called a city council clerk that you can't regulate, that you're not in control of. And I'm going to stop it there because I want to discuss in more detail in executive session. But all you're really saying is the city manager is your executive branch, you're the legislative branch. So anything that's an executive function has to be done by the city manager. Now, who she decides to have do things after that is up to her. The likelihood is she'll delegate the placing of the ads to someone else. And one thing we ought to discuss in executive session is what exactly does council want to do with regard to the job description, which, by the way, I recommend be what it says in the charter. I saw this legal size page, single space of junk that was the last one you used. And among other things, it required that your city council, your city manager have experience with unions. Well, that's an odd requirement in a village that doesn't have one union at all. So we can't just go back and use the other one because it made no sense. So that's another thing we need to discuss is, my guess is we should just refer to what the duties are in the charter as far as the ad, and then you have to decide what you want to do with regard to interviewing and reviewing applications to decide which 3 or 4 or however many you want to interview. But that's something you guys need to discuss and figure out on your own. But the point is, you can't, because of the way the charter works, and I'm telling you, it's counterintuitive, I think your normal person would think if it's a city council clerk, you get to tell her what to do. Under your charter, you don't. That's why the first time I sat in this chair, I suggested we need to get moving on rewriting this charter. So I hope that answers your question.
I think, I have notes here. We'll talk at executive session because.
Mr. Goriak, did you want a second address?
I want to say this to all the citizens of Newton Falls. Just what the city law director just said, there's some qualifications in there that really don't make any sense. When we have somebody from town that's doing an excellent job for the village, is transparent, do we need somebody that we had titles before? Summa Booma, finance managers, separate doctor. What did it get us? Almost to the point of bankruptcy. When we start to take care of our own people that are taking care of us and have some skin in the game, then we're all going to be better off. And some of the people didn't speak up before about what was going on. They just put their heads down. Yes, yes. Where's all the, now it's all of a sudden criticism. I don't really care anymore, people. If I'm a thug or a gangster, I'm a gangster or a thug for the people of this community. So let the Facebookers, the keyboard warriors, type out all they want. I stand on my name. And I'm sorry got it personal tonight, but I want the people to understand, who do we want? Do we want somebody with skin in the game? Do we want somebody that's doing a heck of a job? Somebody that came in here on a few of these positions, we couldn't get anybody. We were like ready to fold this community up and have the state come in here. And we got people that are doing an honest, credible job and want to do the best they can. And now, a little word about interim. Oh, we can't do that. Even though we already said tonight on the floor that we would go out for applications. I believe, I'm not going to listen to you. You're not my boss. You're just going to be, I believe that what Mr. Schrader said. Let's give him the title and then go through the process.
Okay, Mr. Grinch or Ms. Spitzer, do you have anything before we go ahead and call for a roll?
Yes, if I may. Actually, have I already had my second?
Yeah, no, I don't believe you've had a second.
Okay. I think we're getting too wrapped around the axles about this. I really do. There's nothing wrong with being an interim. If a person doesn't respect that, then that says more about them than the person who's holding the interim title. It's a title, and I cannot wrap my head around why we would want to remove the interim title from the interims and not make them permanent. That just doesn't make any sense to me. They're interims until they're not interims. That's the way I look at it.
Did I have 2 addresses yet?
Yeah, everybody has, other than Ms. Spitzer. Okay, is that all you have, Mr. Granchi?
Yes.
Okay, if Mrs. Spitzer doesn't want to weigh in, Mrs. King can call for the roll.
Bariak.
Yes.
Spitzer.
Yes.
Granchi.
No.
Steppert.
No.
Srocco.
No. No, sorry.
Okay, fails. Okay, ordinance 2022-07.
An ordinance removing the interim title from the law director.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Isn't this a little bit different? Can I have the floor, please?
Yes.
Isn't this a little bit different because of the contract we just accepted, sir?
Now the contract says interim in it.
I'm not sure. Look, our contract is either one of us can get out of this in 30 days' notice. So it may be considered different in the sense that it's built in that if you decide to go and advertise for it at any point, you can. And again, I'm not trying to advocate one way or the other, actually. I'm telling you what I said about my prosecutors, that what they tell me and what they're facing. So it might save you some money if the defense attorneys realize these guys might be here for a while. But we still have that 30-day out for both of us. I could choose to accept it and be out of here in 30 days. You could choose to accept it and I'd be out of here in 30 days. So to that extent, maybe it's a little more clear that this isn't, I'm going to be here for 25 years, type thing. But again, it's your call. You decide what you want to do.
Okay, anybody else?
I'm not going to repeat myself with everything, but the firm's contract is interim law director, and go through the process, transparency. If that's who we hire, then that's who we hire. It's the same thing.
Okay, let me see if Spitzer or Granchi wants up first, and then I'll give you a second. Does either one of you guys want to first address?
I would just be spinning my wheels at this point.
Mr. Bariak, you have the floor.
I'm vice president of council. I'm going to put legislation on that we accept applications in for 30 days and we quit kicking this can down the road then. And I'm tired of stand up for what you believe in. Stand up for what you believe in. I believe in what I believe in. Stand up for what you think. We'll go through an interview process, 30 days or whatever. I don't know if I'll put 30, 60, 90 right now. But I want to put, I'm tired of kicking this can down the road over something that doesn't need to be. I'm sorry I'm so emotional tonight, but it's just getting me over and over and over and over and over and over. You don't get what you want, so you fight. I didn't get what I wanted for 6 years, and I didn't take a little hissy fit. Thank you.
Okay, if nobody else wants to address.
Yeah, so is there a motion from Mr. Bariak? Is it?
No.
No,
We got a
I'm putting it
motion
on
on,
now.
we got a motion on the floor right now for this,
I'm gonna think about it.
interim title.
So we can get out of this quagmire.
Mr. Sirotko, would you like an address?
Yes, once again, this really doesn't make a difference on your being the law director if you're interim with a contract or if you're law director with a contract. Is that correct?
It only makes a difference in the sense that this legislation also takes the interim out of the contract. It would make a difference to my prosecutors, we think, because we think that some of the defense attorneys will stop wanting to have so many preliminary hearings. That's the best I can answer the question.
Okay, and by that happening could save the village money? Is that what you're saying for the lack of preliminary hearings?
Yeah, these guys charge by the hour, so the less hours they gotta work, the better. I forget how many they're down from, like if you look at the hours the prosecutors charge in October when they're trying to organize all these files and figure out what's going on, to the hours in November, we were down, I forget what the number was, but it did go down. So the less they have to spend doing these things, the less it costs. But what we're not going to do is let some guy charged with a felony plead it down to a misdemeanor. That's not fair to the victim, and that really doesn't do justice. And in those cases where we think somebody was overcharged with a felony, then justice requires just the opposite, that we drop it. And as I said earlier, in the last 2.5 months, we've only dropped 2 of them. And let's see. And it's on the record what I said as far as the other.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
May I have the floor?
Sure.
I understand what Al's saying, and I don't disagree. I think that supports our need to move forward, advertise, get the applications, interview, and get somebody in a permanent position.
Anybody else? If not, Mrs. King, if you want to go ahead and call for the roll.
Spitzer?
Yes.
Granchi?
No.
Stemper?
No.
Sirotko?
Yes.
Bariak?
Yes.
Okay, passes. Number 5, Resolution 03-2022, a resolution acknowledging an updated written Treasury Investment Board policy. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, if no discussion, whenever Mrs. King is ready to call for the roll.
Granchi?
Yes.
Stemper?
Yes.
Sirotko?
Yes.
Bariak?
Yes.
Spitzer?
Yes.
Okay, resolution passes. Okay, number 6 is Resolution 04-2022, a resolution in support and authorizing the city manager to enter into necessary lease purchase agreement to purchase a backhoe for the City of Newton Falls Street Department. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I'd like to have the floor, Mayor.
Okay, you have the floor, Mr. Bariak.
I'd like to make an amendment. What happened was from the last,
Wait a minute. Make the motion first.
huh?
Make the motion first and then discuss, get the second.
I'd like to make a motion to amend.
Wait, hold on. We have to make a motion to put this on the floor and get a
Okay.
second, and then, okay.
You just did that.
You already have the motion, put it on the floor, but he needs to make his motion to amend
Yeah.
before you discuss.
Okay, that's right.
The motion I'd like to add $5,000 over the 120 we appropriated, because by the time we got to the second one that we had, it was gone.
Okay, do we have a second to amend it to increase it by $5,000?
Second.
Okay, and now we have a first and second. Mr. Boriak, you can have the floor. You can give the reasoning.
What's happened, by the time we got to him, look, this equipment's going like hotcakes. By the time we got there, he said, I sold it. But he had one more, he's got one more, it's a little more expensive. There's a better, it's got better lines, disconnects, better motor. I'll tell you what, this for the extra total it's going to cost us total is $8,000. That's above what we appropriated. What the other one was $216,000. This one is $224,000. It's about $8,000 more. We appropriated what was it?
120.
Excuse me, 120. We need to appropriate $5,000 more, which will more than cover it. And we'll get the extended warranty, the extra bucket. There are a lot. Just real quick. We're getting a better engine. We're getting better hydraulics. We're getting a heavier loader. Auxiliary stick on the lines. This may not mean something to a lot of people, but when it comes to our employees working with the day-to-day, these are nice additions to have. And we just need one. We got to get on the ball. We We have till what? Tomorrow, Mrs.
Yes.
We have till tomorrow. We're going to lose this one.
Is there anybody else that would like to address?
I just wanted to clarify with Mr. Housley, we're good with an extra 5,000 for
Sure,
not a big
yes,
deal?
you are.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to have to bring an appropriation measure for the lease, but yes, this community has the finances for this.
I can't hear you, Sean.
Yes, this community has the finances for this.
He said, yes, we have the finances. We're good.
Oh,
Okay, anybody else before we call for the roll? Okay,
this is on the amendment, right? This is on the amendment for the 5,000.
yeah.
Stempert,
Yes.
Sriracha,
Yes.
Bariak,
Yes.
Spletzer.
Yes.
Bianchi.
Yes.
Okay, amended, and now it's on the floor as amended. Do we have any discussion on that, or do we want to just go ahead and,
Call the roll.
all right?
Sriracha,
Yes.
Bariak,
Yes.
Spletzer.
Yes.
Bianchi.
Yes.
Stempert.
Yes.
Okay, passes. All right, resolution, or number 7 is resolution 05-2022, a resolution in support and authorizing the city manager to enter into the necessary lease purchase agreement to purchase 2 vehicles for the Falls Police Department. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Can we have second? Any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Boriak?
This is what we discussed the last time. We have the financing quote. Did everybody get a financing quote? Did everybody, it was on the table tonight? This is what we discussed the last time. Like I say, there's over a year turnaround time on this. We are in a little bit different situation, but we still have to get, is that right, Mrs. Purdy? What
Yes.
Could you add anything to this?
No, well, it meets the terms of what council had set. It's, the interest rate is 5.7 and you guys allowed 6.5 interest rate, and it is a dollar lease or a dollar payment at the end of the lease period. And it was 48 months.
I have a second address.
Well, let me see if anybody else has anything on it first. Anybody want to first address? You know,
I
Mr.
like
Boriak?
seeing the quote. I'm glad we got the quote in front of us to.
If I may.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are wondering, we're spending money here, and we say we don't have money, but, these things are necessities. And you gotta have what you gotta have to keep running the village. So, that's all.
Mr. Moryak, did you want the floor?
I wanted to backtrack 1 second. The 3.39% interest rate, now this is a year newer unit though, right?
Correct.
But it's for the tractors, 4.1, went from 3.39. Wasn't that what we had the last interest rate at, Mr. Housley?
I can't recall the exact.
Does that sound like we're in the ballpark?
Yeah, it sounded like you're in the ballpark.
We appropriated the authorization, we authorized to go out to what, 6.5%, sir?
Right.
This is right now is 5.7 right now. God knows where the interest is going to go with the inflation. God knows. So it is, we do need, I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Sirocco. He's an ex-police officer for 25 years. I agree with him wholeheartedly. We need it. Thank you.
Mrs. King, you want to call for the roll?
Bariak.
Yes.
Spletzer.
Yes.
Franchi.
Yes.
Stepper.
Yes.
Sirocco.
Yes.
It passes. Okay, number 8 is a motion to repeal motion passed January 19th, 2022, authorizing the city clerk to advertise for the position of law director. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Granchi?
Mr. Schrader,
Yes, sir.
I'm just going to ask point blank on this. In the legal opinion that was sent from your, firm saying, as such, there has been no violation of Article 3, Section 12 as analyzed, the correct procedure would have been for council to request the city manager to advertise for the listed position, not the city clerk. So there is no violation of interference with this one that is looking to be repealed, correct?
Nothing of any importance. Arguably, there was some things that shouldn't have been done, but it's de minimis. It doesn't matter. If the problem is you have a charter, and I already gave that speech how bad the charter is. To punish anybody for possibly misinterpreting it would be ridiculous. I mean, it's been used in the past to overturn the will of the voters. It's just a bad charter. So my opinion was, okay, maybe we named the wrong person to do this. It should have been the city manager. It said the city council clerk. But I know that when Chris was sitting here, he looked at it. He was asked about whether it should be an ordinance or a resolution or a motion. He wasn't asked about whether it should be the city manager. And nobody would necessarily pick up on that for the simple reason that one would tend to think that a city council clerk should be able to report to city council. So no, I don't see, when you got it, people can make mistakes, no big deal. And I would urge people, and this, by the way, did not come, those were actually, that letter was in response to a couple of citizens making a complaint, both of whom withdrew the complaint eventually. So I don't see it as a big deal.
Well, further from there, I have 88 pages worth of ordinances, resolutions, and motions that have been passed by council since January 1st, 2020, directing the city clerk to do something. So there's plenty of precedence with this. So I don't see any reason in the world to repeal these motions.
Okay, well, you're wrong on that one. Here's the problem. The fact that it was done in the past that way doesn't mean it's right. You spent most of the meeting talking about stuff that was done in the past that wasn't right. Now, we don't all have to wear hair shirts about that. What our obligation to do is to do it right in the future. So my recommendation, and you can take it or not, would be repeal the motion that directs City Council Clerk to do that, and instead pass a motion to have the city manager do those things. If you want to do it for all 4 positions, go ahead. And so I hate to be so blunt, but I appreciated you were blunt with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, I really would, that's my recommendation, is just do it right this time.
Right, but it's legally sound as it stands currently, correct?
No, it isn't, because
You just said that there was no,
it's not legally sound in the sense that it should have been the city manager who was ordered to do those things. And by the way, a lot of those ordinances that were passed before, well, first off, many of them were ordinances, not motions or resolutions. But more important, a lot of them just reiterated duties of a city council clerk that exist in general law. Under annexation, anything you directed the clerk to do was already her job under 70907 of the revised code, the annexation statutes. Very similar to the ones where you list a whole litany of people that can sign bonds and loans and things like that. So I just want you to do it right going forward. That's all. I don't think anybody should be in trouble for how they interpreted it, and I don't think we should make a big deal about it. Just change it to city manager. You get exactly the same thing done, and nobody can criticize you for violating the charter until we can manage to get it amended.
Okay, anybody else?
Yes. So this ordinance went into the city manager's office on the 14th of January. Not the ordinance, I'm sorry, the request. The email came in. Then we had a meeting on the 19th. Nothing is said until citizens sent, did they send that directly to your office? Complaints?
No, I think I got it from the city manager.
Not the one that sent it.
Oh, maybe one was sent.
I'm asking because as a council member, it was my understanding that there's a chain of command. So if I have a concern or something that I'm going to ask legal representation for, reach out to your firm, that's going to go through our mayor or our city manager, that I'm not just going to be sending off emails and asking them questions and making phone calls, was my understanding.
The way it usually works is that when there's a request, we all send it to Kathy King, and then she sends it out, and then that's that statute I quoted, that the city manager and I and Kathy all look at it. And Kathy did a good job with a good part of that. And again, I'd rather discuss this in executive session, but there were some things she corrected so people didn't look bad. There were other things that I think people just didn't think about. The only thing that was curious about that one was that really wasn't on the agenda I saw until it was the final agenda. Now, I went back through my emails and I saw something where somebody had asked me to draft an ordinance or a resolution, and I remember Kathy said, you don't have to do it. And I didn't, my radar wasn't on to read closely the next sentence, which would have probably tipped me off to this. But I was thinking, okay, great, we don't have to do that resolution. Let's move on to something else. So I think that's where it kind of broke down. There wasn't the red light going off that, wait a minute, maybe it should be somebody else doing this.
So you're saying that any ordinance we do directs or authorizes the city manager only?
I'm sorry?
Any ordinance or resolution that we do needs to direct or authorize the city manager to do something, no one else?
No. Anything that relates to the administrative part of the city, you direct the city manager to do. Your charter talks about what the city manager can do. A lot of people assume that because the city manager and generally is in charge of all department heads, that the city manager is necessarily in charge of Kathy. That's a reasonable assumption to make, but not correct according to your charter, because your charter lists specific department heads that Kathy's in charge of. That Pam, as city manager, is in charge of, and Kathy is not one of them listed. So, and that's, again, I think that it would be very easy for people to assume that Kathy works for Pam for the simple reason if you go into the office, there sits Kathy. And so basically, as I understand it, over the years, various city officials have given Kathy the role of basically an executive assistant to Pam. They've given her the role of enforcing your drug policy. That's an administrative role. But nobody ever went back to look at the charter or the ordinances to figure out who ought to be in charge of administering Kathy. So if anybody wants to draft an ordinance, I always suggest they first run it through Kathy. Kathy takes a look, puts it in proper form, runs it past the rest of us.
And as council supporting that motion, or that's what I thought happened. It went to
I'm
council.
sorry, I'm having a heck of a time.
That's what I assumed happened. The email was sent, it went to Kathy, it went to you, and it's on the agenda. So.
And it didn't happen that way, so.
Could I get the floor, Mayor?
Yeah, Mr. Boric, you have the floor.
Any time that I've ever, on my time on council, have went to propose some legislation, I've been told that the law director has to run it by him or it doesn't get on there. That not only protects me as a councilman, it protects you as the village from lawsuits. Now, did something slip by you, Mrs. Pretty? Did anything slip by you that you didn't get aware of or the law director didn't get aware of?
We did not see that. When I saw it, I immediately called Al.
Well. Do you understand that now, Julie? I thought that anything that we did, and you're new, and I respect you, but you can't just come down and say, I want City Hall shut down for 3 days. I propose that legislation. It may not be legal. So we don't bypass the city manager or the law director.
It wasn't intentional, that's the process we thought we
Oh,
had.
it was done though. Excuse me, ma'am. It was done. I don't care if it was intentional or not. Let's quit getting into semantics. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Letzer or Mr. Sirotko, would you like to? Yeah. Okay. The bottom line is, if we look at the 19th agenda, it said to make a motion to have the city clerk put out the application. So it was really, it was an improper motion that it should have went through the city manager. And that's why it's on here to have it repealed. So if there's no other discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I have my second?
Yeah, would you like a second address?
Yes, please. My biggest disappointment with this is the fact that it was sent out on Friday, 5 days before the meeting, to everyone. Nobody said anything, including the law department. When the law department was here, Mr. Immel had to come in. And if Mr. Immel doesn't have the same skill set as Mr. Schrader, I don't know why Mr. Immel was here.
Well, actually, he does. The point was, and what I tried to say earlier, is that charter is so badly written.
Right.
It was essentially I mean, we had to do a really deep dive into this thing to figure out what it said. And we were a little surprised when we found, well, Pam found it, an ordinance that basically said Pam is in charge of the agenda in essence, that Kathy and I and her are in charge of that, and she's in charge of us. So it's not the kind of thing that you would intuitively catch. So that's why I'm saying nobody should blame any councilman. Nobody should be, let's just do it right. That's all. Just do it right.
Can I have a second?
Yes.
Can we amend this instead of repealing?
I can't hear, what did you say?
She wants to amend it. How, in what, you probably could, in what manner though?
Add 5 words.
That one, I'm not sure. I was thinking that too. It might be easier to just amend it and substitute city manager for city council clerk. But the fact you already passed it, I'm just not real sure that.
Yeah.
I think maybe you have to repeal the other one before you do, and then pass a new one. And sorry to be so hyper-technical, but, you know.
That's what I would think, because it was passed, it was an improper motion in the first place, so they both need to be repealed and then go forth to where it's done properly, and that's to go through administration to have it done.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody has the same mindset, but it was done improperly from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think that would be the cleaner way to do it. I think you're right. Everybody has the same mindset. So why not just repeal these? Then I don't see anything wrong. Kathy, I don't see why they can't make a motion to do all 4 of those things, but have Pam do it without getting into another meeting and delaying it another 2 weeks and all that, if that's what they wish to do.
I mean, if you want, we can repeal both of these, and if somebody wants to add to the agenda, the tail end here, a motion to have the city manager put out applications for the positions that you want done. I mean, you do that, you only need a simple majority to put them on the agenda. But you need a supermajority, if you want to call it, I believe, to pass the motion. So, but first off, we have a motion on the floor here to repeal. Does anybody else that hasn't spoke like to add anything? Okay, if not, if Mrs. King wants to call for the roll.
Spitzer?
Yes.
Franchi?
Yes.
Stempert?
Yes.
Sirocco?
Yes.
Bariak?
Yes.
Okay, that's repealed. Okay, number 9 is a motion to repeal motion passed January 19th, 2022, authorizing the city clerk to advertise for the position of finance director. Would somebody like?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we got a second. Any discussion? Okay, if not, if Mrs. King.
If I can real quick.
Sure.
I don't want anyone to think this is on Ms. King for this. She sent me the draft afterwards. The draft said to direct. I didn't catch it. It is not on her. It is on me. I just want that to be out there.
Okay.
I'll address also. Authorize, direct, they're all synonyms. You're permitting, you're approving, you're advising, you're informing. Just a play on words. It's not intentional, however it was perceived.
Anybody else? Mr. Bariak?
I just want to try to have us all on the same page and not have some council person doing something that the rest of us aren't aware of, or the law director or the city manager aren't aware of. That's all. It's not rocket science. It's just being transparent. That's what I thought this wasn't handled properly.
Yeah, either way, it was an improper motion. It doesn't mean that somebody's always has ill will to do something, but it wasn't done properly. So Is there anybody else that wants an address before we go ahead and call for the roll? Mrs. King wants to call for the roll.
Bianchi?
Yes.
Stempert?
Yes.
Sirocco?
Yes.
Bariak?
Yes.
Spletzer?
Yes.
Okay, motion repealed. Does somebody want to make or add to the agenda tonight a motion, possibly to, direct city manager to look for applications for the positions, or you want to add that
We
to
can
the
do it
agenda?
next,
or-
I'll redraft it.
Okay, all right, that's fine. I didn't know which direction you guys wanted to go. All right. Number 10 is a motion to appoint a special charter review commission. Do we have a
So moved.
motion? Mr. Granchi?
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
I turned mine into the clerk. I think we could save a lot of time if we all turn ours into the clerk right now. We know who we want.
You have extra?
Yeah, I didn't get one.
Let her tally them up, and let's be done with it, because we have a little executive session we have to
Can I
do.
have one too?
Did
It's gonna snow tomorrow morning.
I want another paper, I wrote all of mine. Sorry.
Mine is done.
I thought we were gonna.
You guys did separate ones, so what is she gonna do, compare them, or what are you gonna do?
Can I,
Okay.
Jessica, where are your pens?
Sorry, I thought you were giving us one, I wrote all of them.
Do you want to count these now, or do you want to go to executive session and come back? How do you want to do it?
I think we should count them now.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell you what, I don't know if we need a motion to do so or what, but I wanna go use the restroom.
Me too.
Do we want to,
Second that.
first and a second to, take 5-6 minutes
5
when she
minutes.
does it? Okay, all right.
Second.
Okay, second, I don't know, do we need a roll on that?
Oh, you don't even, you
Roll call.
run the meeting, you just call a recess, we'll be back in 5 minutes. And I'm gonna race you to there.
Hey, Kenny. Can you find me a water? What's this for? No, that door will stay.
No, I got 2 more right now. Thank you.
Can we count on this stuff, like add numbers on one?
Yeah, I already got a blank one here, so.
All right, okay, so
This.
I'll go down and you number.
Yeah, okay.
Turn this thing off.
You got 3 hours.
30.
It's only an hour. I have tomorrow on possibly.
Half hour before you go, I was already.
all seated and ready to go?
Here comes Mr. Richards.
Okay, you say you just read the ones that
Those
are,
that are circled on the right-hand side.
okay, there's 7 of them here that consensus agreed on. Mr. Richard Curlin is the first person. Warner Lang is the second person. Tracy Hurst is the third person.
Who?
Tracy Hurst. Bruce Moore. Julie Lemon.
I can't hear you, Mayor. Speak.
Okay. Julie Lemon, John Richards, and Sandra Armbruster Brockway. Okay, that's the 7 that you guys voted on. Who should this go to as a record?
Record
Couldn't
keeper.
hear.
Back to yourself? Okay.
That's the results. Thank you.
All right, so.
I make a motion, we go into executive session.
Wait, we gotta vote on that.
Well, we gotta make a motion to
First,
accept
first
it.
we have to, yeah.
I make a motion, we accept the.
Well, we have that motion on the floor to appoint, so.
Okay,
All right.
so do we just have to call for a roll to accept?
All right.
Stemper,
Sorry, yes.
Sirocco,
Yes.
Bariak,
Yes.
Spletzer,
Yes.
Franchi.
Yes.
Okay, accepted. Public comments. Non-agenda items are open. So give your name, your address, you have 3 minutes.
John Richards, 212 Albert Street, and I want to go back into the DORA. I wasn't able to speak fast enough, and there's just one real important point I wanted to address. And in this ordinance, Section 4 talks about qualified permit holders, and it lists the 4. And the verbiage is, the city of Newton Falls has identified 4 qualified permit holders that will likely be included in the DORA, which are identified as follows. And those are Mi Amigos, Covered Bridge Inn, AMVETS, and FACES. And of those 4, 1 doesn't serve alcohol. I don't think the Covered Bridge Inn is anything but a restaurant. Am I wrong on that?
They serve alcohol.
Okay, then I stand corrected on that. I was told that AMVETS took a vote and they voted to not participate in the DORA. So I don't know if that makes a difference, whether or not they just have to be in the area or whether or not they have to participate. So I wanted to bring that up. And my viewpoint, and again, this is only an opinion, but if I ran an establishment and I sold alcohol, I don't see why I would want my customer to leave my business when they could stay in my business and drink their alcohol there. To me, that's what I would like. I would like my customers to stay where they are. But again, that's only an opinion. Another thing quickly, Councilman at Large, I really appreciate the question you asked Mr. Schaefer, and I am entirely satisfied with his answer on whether or not it's a conflict of interest. And I like it that it's clarified and clear what those circumstances would be. And I hope I was respectful to you.
Absolutely.
And the point I want to make, and I'll quickly make it, is I'm a retired factory worker, obviously with no legal knowledge at all, but I read the ordinance, and then I read the Ohio Revised Code that is quoted in the ordinance. And then I check the exhibits, and the ordinance refers to the Ohio Revised Code and says certain things have to be on these exhibits. They aren't on them. There is no maps drawn. All you have is a photograph and an Exhibit B, and an Exhibit B with no DORA on it. But I'll tell you where the DORA is. The DORA description is in Section 2 in the ordinance, and it describes the address ranges that are downtown. There are no rivers near it. It doesn't extend to any of the parks. It is in the downtown business district that is in the ordinance in the description of the boundaries. Those supporting exhibits don't have what the ORC wants, and they just show huge areas with no other information. It took me a while to figure out what those exhibits were, because I thought, geez, it's including Liberty Street, it's including Bridge Street. Well, none of that's true. Read section 2, where it describes the boundaries and says what has to be on those maps from the ORC. Thank you.
Adam Zimmerman, 515 LeMay Avenue. I just want to say real quick that I attended the Parks and Rec committee meeting last week, and I was appalled at what I witnessed from our council representative to that committee. If everyone's not aware, Ms. Spletzer is a council representative. Just real briefly, the role of the council representative is to report the goings-on of that committee to council, maybe ask a few questions on things that need to be cleared up, and to bring things back to council that need voted on. What did I witness that was so appalling, you might ask? Ms. Spletzer proposed new business during that meeting. Council is not supposed to be able to propose new business during a committee meeting like that. Ms. Spletzer has said that she previously typed out the minutes for a committee meeting and sent them on to Kathy King while Jamie Klein was the secretary. The council representative, what's your point of order, Ms. Spletzer?
You are incorrect.
No, the minutes should reflect that you said that.
In the past, I had typed up the minutes for the previous secretary, is what I said.
That's what I said too. You did it for Jamie Klein when she was secretary. Is that not what you just said? Thank you. And last but no way least, Ms. Spletzer handed out employee handbooks to the members of that committee. She said that because they are paid $5 per meeting, yes, they are, $10 per meeting, and yes, they are only paid $10 per meeting, that they are employees of the city and subject to the employee handbook, particularly the section on social media because of the issues that they were having with the Planning and Zoning Commission. Now I have to wonder, who directed her to hand out those employee handbooks to the committee members? Did someone do it, or did she go rogue and do it on her own? At the special meeting of council last week, we heard from the part-time finance director that the city of Newton Falls has an outstanding credit rating. If the past administration did things so incorrectly with the funds and finances, as we have all been led to believe, how does the city still have an outstanding credit rating? Every meeting, we are starting to peel back the layers of the onion presented to us by the mayor and some members of council that things are quite not as bad as we've been led to believe that they were. Why do we always hear from the law director that he needs to go do additional research now that it is time to vote on issues? Why wasn't research done before this point? Why do we find out now, such as here with the DORA, that he doesn't know much about this? This wasn't just prepared yesterday. This was started on October 4th, which is 4 months ago, and we still find out you don't know anything about it. Why is that? I don't think the DORA boundaries can be amended because they are listed in the application already sent to the state. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but if they are submitted on that application, I don't believe we can amend those. I believe that a whole new application needs to be submitted with new boundaries. If I'm wrong, please, point it out, let me know. And last but not least, I want to say thank you to the council members that attempted to vote down and do what's right by keeping the titles interim. I want everyone to see that we still are trying to fulfill these positions, that transparency, in the name of transparency, that we, the people, know that these are going to be advertised for, and that we are going to try to find the best people for these positions. Thank you.
Julie Lemon, 609 Ridge Road. What we, the people, need is for our leaders to simply uphold your oaths of office, follow our charters, follow the procedures and the rules. You guys voted multiple times unanimously on things tonight. You guys have accomplished what previous council could not. I think each and every one of you have something that you can bring to the community and unite us. The bitterness needs to end, and we need everybody to follow the rules. That's all I have to say.
Jim Milano on 210 East Liberty Street. First, I want to say, Mr. Granchi, I want to publicly acknowledge you for offering to help with my car repairs this week or last week when my car was down. Appreciate your text, offering to come over and help with my car repairs. I appreciate that very much. And council, I'm very disappointed in your vote on the water meters. Very disappointed in that. I think there were a lot of things you could have done. I think you're making it extremely hard. Mrs. Pretty, I think you could have done a better job at that. You're asking people to pay the $60 plus the $27 service fee they're paying every month. So you're asking, if I get the non-meter that you want me to have, you're asking me to pay $87 a month. Maybe you should have made them pay their $27 towards the purchase of that meter instead. Or if there were only 30 people that opted out, Tesla, you can shake your head all you want, but the thing for you to remember is people are going to judge you by your actions, not by your intentions. And your actions were that you told people what they were going to do, and then you turned around and did just the opposite. So you can shake your head all you want. I'm making a suggestion to Mrs. Pretty, and that is that people that are getting the other meters are going to be paying $87 a month because they're paying $60. Am I right, Mrs. Pretty? For 5 months, it's $50 or $60, correct?
Depending on what you opted out of.
Correct. It's not $5, it's $60, $50 or $60 for 6 months to pay for the 2 meters. Okay, it's not $5, Tessa, it's like $50 or $60.
The $5.50 is the reading portion.
Correct. But the rest of it is like $60, right in that range, correct? So I'm going to be paying $87.
We got to go by council rules, Mr.
That's not.
Point of order. We have to go, we can't be asking questions.
I'm going to be paying $87 a month for 6 months. Maybe you should have made it my $27 service charge for 6 months or 8 months goes to pay for the meter that I wanted. Or work it out a different way. There were a lot of different ways that could have been worked out versus just shoving that $60 extra a month down on people. And I think it would have been taken a lot better.
Anybody else?
Chelsea Harper, 128 West Corey. Did anybody look at the legality of like taking the word, and I know it's just a word, but the word interim out, and then going out for applications? Like, is it literally stated in probably, hopefully, big bold letters that you can still do that? Or could the person that you're taking interim off of come back at you and say, well, no, you made me this person? I'm just asking. I mean, everybody's going back and forth so much and not including anything that actually makes any sense. Other than the fact that you're saying that some people don't like some people, well, probably not. I mean, if you stepped into a city that was a mess, you're going to have people who hate you and you're going to have people who like you. You're going to have both sides of the fence, especially being interim law director, interim city manager. Half the people in this town aren't going to like you because you have to make decisions that nobody likes. That happens. I mean, I know you can't answer, but maybe we should look at what that actually means. And being interim it's just a term. Like, if you go into a place of business and that's where you're in charge, and then you go down and you fill in at another place or another store, you're only there for a certain amount of time before you leave, unless you decide you want to put in the application there, which is literally all that it means. You guys spent 30 minutes talking about whether or not you should take a word off the front of their names. When on your plaques it says the name, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. And, I mean, talking about not liking each other, you guys got mad about directing Kathy King, who's been doing this job since I was in diapers, to do something that she's been doing for that long. The woman knows what she's doing. Mm-hmm. So what if she decides she's going to put applications out, or put out the thing to take in applications? I slightly agree that it's kind of a conflict of interest to have the person who may be applying for it put out the requirements for it. At least have council vote on the requirements or something. It just looks fishy. And I'm sorry, but a couple extra legal steps for different cases might not be such a bad idea. And getting extra opinions on those legal cases might not be such a bad idea. If past events in the past 6 months mean anything, then maybe taking a second look at a lot of things makes a lot of sense.
Anybody else?
Good evening. I've only got one thing. In the event of an extended power outage, I've coordinated efforts with the fire department to provide heat to residents if they need it. The fire department's agreed to open up their day room at the station. We have a backup generator. If anybody needs to do so, we can provide heat for them if they need.
Where's it at, sir?
The fire station, 19
No,
North
where
Canal.
is the power out at?
It hasn't happened yet. I'm saying if we have an extended power outage and they need heat, we've made arrangements to do that. Okay?
Thank you. Question, can I ask? How would they, Officer Farr, how would they contact, would it be like the non-emergency number, or would they just show up?
They can dial the non-emergency number for dispatch or 911, whatever's easiest for them.
Thank you very much.
Okay?
Anybody else? Okay, for closing remarks, Mr. Srotko, do you have anything?
No.
Okay, Mr. Bariak?
Yeah, I'm gonna say a couple things. First of all, to answer a question by Mr. Richards, I don't believe that AMVETS has anything to do with it. That's a private club. You don't go in there unless you have a card. So anybody just walking around town wanting to go into the AMVETS is not gonna get in there, sir. So that may be which brings to the point with this. We had a law director here before, and sometimes we waited 2 to 3 months and never got an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and now everything has to be done up to. And it seems like always, what can I do to tear this town apart instead of contacting your elected official, saying, I have a disagreement, let's try to talk it out, before you come up here and just start throwing arrows and smiling and I got one in on you. Now, I will agree with you on another thing. Mrs. King has been doing this for a lot of years. You know what I mean? She has been doing it for a lot of years. So I will agree with that. The other thing is I want to tell all the people tonight, I'm going to turn into the professor now. If you take 1 teaspoon of Dawn, 1 tablespoon of rubbing alcohol, and a ½ gallon of warm or hot water, and pour it on your steps or concrete, it will keep it from refreezing, and you won't have the concrete popping up with all this salt. You put salt on it, it sounds like a gun going off on the. Try it. Just double the recipe if you have to. Let me know if it works. If it does, I'm going to patent it. Thank you. Have a nice evening, everybody.
Okay, Ms. Bletzer, you have anything?
I would just like to make sure that everybody takes their time going home tonight, and I do want to wish the road crews that will be out most likely all night long and all day to tomorrow. I just want them to stay safe and stay hydrated. And wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day. It'll be Valentine's Day, it'll be over by the time we meet again, so.
Okay, Mr. Granchi?
Yes. I just wanted to remind everyone that the contractor registration begins next week. That was something I was asked to put out at this meeting. And just a preemptive thank you and be safe to the street department, utility department, and all the first responders as we prepare for Snowmageddon Part 2. That's all.
Mrs. Stemper?
I just repeat what Tessa and Mr. Granchi said with our road department and our city workers, and keeping us safe and taking care of themselves.
All right. Ms. Pretty, you have anything?
No.
Okay. Okay, I just got a couple brief things. I wanted to thank everybody here tonight, everybody, council, staff, citizens. You know, we're putting in an effort, trying to do what's right for the community. I agree with Ms. Harper that no matter what you do, you're always going to have somebody that's displeased with you. I mean, that's the way it is. Sometimes you got to make decisions, you got to swallow, and you got to make a tough decision where you're not going to be very popular. But the one thing here is I don't know, I just wanted to talk about a little bit about the interim positions, whatever you want to call them. You know, what's in the name? Is a rose still spelled just as sweet if it's called something else? You know, isn't that how the poem goes? But the fact of the matter is, we were never intending not to open these positions up to individuals. I mean, I know that individuals like to come across and try to act like that's what was going to take place. Maybe the mayor was going to pound this person through or whatever. That was never the intention. Fact of the matter is, what is being done is we're going to do things the right way. I know I've preached this for 2 years. I'm preaching in the choir. You know, individuals that aren't here anymore. I said it to them, that maybe if they would have done it the right way, maybe they'd be sitting here. Fact of the matter is, when we say, well, can't you just do this? Anybody, just get the janitor out there, hire somebody, do something. No, it's in the charter. There's a right way of doing things. There's a lot of things in the charter that don't make a whole lot of sense. That's why we got a commission or whatever, but you got to follow it. Fact of the matter is, if somebody sponsors legislation to direct the city manager to go on, she's the chief administrator, she will go in, she will use the charter for the position to advertise for the city manager position. She will advertise for the police chief and such, and we'll do so. We'll look at the letters of interest, and we'll interview the individual. The individuals that are sitting in them seats right now, they have every right to apply, to interview, whatever. I said, but it was never said that we weren't going to do that. It was said that we're going to do it the correct way. You know, we're going to follow what it says in the charter, like it or not like it. You know, there's a right way of doing it. It's funny, individuals will come up here, well, why can't we do it this way? I like so-and-so. That's irrelevant. There's procedures. There's a right way of doing things, and that's what we're going to do. And that's all I have to say. So we want to make a motion to recess into executive session for number 1, personnel, and number 3, pending or imminent court action.
So moved.
Second.
We have second. If Mrs. King wants to call for the roll.
Saraka?
Yes.
Bariak?
Yes.
Spletzer?
Yes.
Franchi?
Yes.
Stempert?
Yes.
Executive session. We can sprint because we're going to have one candidate.
Because I don't have to go to work after.